Good morning, Mr. Clerk. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have quorum.
I call this meeting of City Council for June 26, 2025 to order and acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, and the Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. We have a motion to allow Councillor Allard to participate remotely in today's meeting. It requires the approval of Council. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the motion into the record?
Moved by Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, seconded by Councillor John Orlico, that in accordance with Section 919 of the Procedure Bylaw 50/2007, that Councillor Allard be allowed to participate remotely in today's meeting of Council.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. We'll now have the opening prayer. Please rise if you're able, and we'll hear from Councillor Lukes.
Righto. As we begin this meeting, I want to acknowledge the very difficult and uncertain times we are all living through, from the many global and local conflicts that impact our residents, to the economic pressures we are all under, and to the personal and professional burdens that each of us carries. It's clear that stress is affecting our communities and our lives in many ways. And yet, despite it all, we are here, united by a shared purpose, to make decisions that move our city forward, to improve the quality of life for our residents, and to create a stronger, more resilient community. The work we do around this table matters. It's driven by a deep commitment to service. Our work is shaped by collaboration and truly strengthened by diverse perspectives. While we may not always agree on every detail, I believe we all share the same goal, the well-being and future of our city. Let us approach today's agenda with respect, thoughtfulness, and commitment to progress. Our residents are counting on us, and I believe we're up to the task. Now let's get to work.
Thank you.
I'll say amen.
Yeah.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Rawadi, Dobson, Duncan, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt, and Allard.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce today's pages. Please join me in welcoming Michael Mashinter from Techvoc High School, who resides in the Point Douglas ward, and Vladislav Tanischuk from St. James Collegiate, who resides in the St. James ward. Thank you for joining Council today. As Council is aware, the procedure bylaw requires that the agenda of each regular meeting of Council must be provided to the members of Council at least 4 business days preceding the meeting. Due to technical difficulties, the agenda for today's meeting was provided to Council 15 minutes past the deadline. And the agenda was, pardon me? Yes, yeah, we're good. The agenda was further updated yesterday afternoon to include schedules to 3 bylaws. Accordingly, we will require suspension of the rules to consider today's agenda items. Someone can move suspension. Councillor Rawadi, all in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for the transparency on that. Councillor Duncan, will you move that the minutes of the meeting held on May 22nd, 2025, June 2nd, June 5th, and June 11th be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. We'll now move into delegations. All delegations are joining us in person. Mr. Mayor?
Do we have announcements now, or we can do it after delegations? I'm
No,
fine
we'll
too.
do that now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Sure.
You're the only one. You
Okay.
have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to acknowledge once again that many council members and members of our administration also attended our late colleague Jason Schreier's funeral service on Friday. It was a beautiful, really celebration of his life, and I think all of us were touched by all those who participated and the words of remembrance that were shared. And just want to acknowledge once again that all of us continue to remember his wife, and children, his parents as well, and the entire family and friends that have been impacted by Jason's death. I do also want to just turn our attention ahead to the coming days and the remainder of this week. It is a big week for our city, especially for our downtown. On Monday, we announced the first steps toward reimagining Graham Avenue as a vibrant pedestrian-focused destination at the heart of Winnipeg. It's a great opportunity to really change how people experience this part of our downtown. And I know a lot of us look forward to working with our community partners on the future of Graham Avenue. The pilot for Graham Avenue, of course, coincides with the June 29th launch of the primary transit network, which will move buses off of Graham Avenue. And on Sunday, I and Councillor Lukes at least will be up early, very early, to be on one of the first buses that leave the transit garage. I think around 5 a.m. or so it leaves the garage. As part of the new primary transit network, as that new transit network goes into service and the routes and the stops change across the city of Winnipeg. We're replacing just about all bus routes in Winnipeg so they're more frequent, direct, and connected and simplified. And we're moving bus stops around to be more accessible, closer to controlled crosswalks, and with more consistent spacing. I think all of us expect that our offices will be receiving calls and emails as people adjust to the new transit system. So I call upon all Winnipeggers asking for their patience as we transition our bus system and make a significant change to transit for the sake of a better transit service for Winnipeggers in the future. And tomorrow, Portage-Germain will reopen to pedestrians for the first time in 46 years. Ending the debate, hopefully once for all, the removal of the barricades and the work to turn the intersection into a pedestrian crossing is complete. The project's on time and on budget, and I'm getting very positive feedback from people in the downtown, that live in the downtown, that work in the downtown, and businesses that are located in our downtown as well. Altogether, these changes represent a renewed vision for our city and for our downtown, one that's more connected, accessible, and vibrant. And I want to commend every member of council for stepping up, for making these investments. These are some of the biggest, boldest changes really that Winnipeg has seen in decades, and so everyone here around this chamber and all those in our public service who are working to make it happen deserve credit for this, so thank you. And this Tuesday coming up, of course, is Canada Day, and it's always great to see that there are so many celebrations for Canada Day that happen across our city in all the wards that are represented around this chamber. I'll be at the Forks and the Bridgewater, Chinatown, Transcona, Sage Creek, River Park South, Princess Auto Stadium, just to name a few of the stops along the way on that day. And I know there are fireworks shows at Princess Auto Stadium, Assiniboine Downs, and a few community events as well. So I encourage everyone to get out and to celebrate our great nation. Even in the midst of all the challenges that we face as a nation and all the troubles there are in the world right now, there is so much to be thankful for in being Canadian. There's a lot to celebrate and be grateful for. We have a wonderful, wonderful nation, I believe the best nation in the world, and we have to do all we can in our power to celebrate, to protect, and continue to promote our great country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Mays?
Thank you. I didn't notify in advance, but the mayor has reminded me I wanted to say a few words that our last council meeting was May 22, and on May 26th, we had, in reference to Councillor Schreier, we had a wonderful tribute game, Reach for the Top tribute game at Miles Mack. He always enjoyed those games, always spoke about how he decided to run for council one day when he was at Miles Mack. So thank you to the council colleagues who passed the hat, and we raised $1,250 for bursary money for the five grade 12 Reach for the Top players at Miles Mack. So that made for a nice conclusion. And I was also able to quote Councillor Rollins' musical rendition of Fire and Rain in one of the questions we posed to the students who had to sing a response. So I thought Councillor Schreier would have loved that. So thank you to colleagues for contributing to that, and I think it was a nice send-off for our former colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. Councillor Rollins, you have a morning announcement?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as you know, downtown is a priority, and as a downtown councillor, I was surprised to not get an invitation to the Graham Avenue.
Councillor Rollins, this is not in the announcement section.
But Madam Speaker, I do believe downtown and the priority that is downtown and the events that I'm speaking to that are really mirrored by the mayor's speech is very similar. So will just challenge, Madam Speaker, that when the mayor speaks about downtown and a downtown councillor stands up to speak about downtown, it be heard.
What is your morning announcement?
Thank you. My morning announcement is that downtown residents do have an opportunity to be excited, and they would like their downtown councillor to be present. And so I'm hoping the mayor will proactively disclose the publication of release of information anticipated for the downtown. For instance, Portage
Councillor
and Main,
Rollins,
that all of...
thank you. You've made your point, and this is a stretch for morning announcements. So I'd like to move on, please.
But Madam Speaker, it is about the downtown, and I am a downtown councillor, so
We'll take that
perhaps
conversation offline. If you'd like to challenge the chair, you're welcome to.
Gilroy would continue.
Councillor Rollins, thank you. You've made your point. Councillor Wyatt?
Madam Speaker, I would like just to rise and to inform members of council that on July the 1st at dusk, the tradition continues at Beulah Recreation Park. We will be hosting a Canada Day fireworks display, second to none, put on by Archangel. I've been working actively with the Transcona Business Improvement Zone to secure funds. We have an excellent new executive director, Nikki Burbank, working with her and the board of directors. And I can tell you that it's, it's always a challenge. A lot of the businesses in the past who we relied upon have stepped up to help with the folks coming from the north through the fires. We've been able as a city to step up with funding to assist, and that the fireworks are going ahead. One of the things I just want to state for anybody who's planning to attend, Dougal Road is closed due to construction, so please avoid Dougal Road. To access Beulah Recreation Park is to come off of Plessy Road then onto St. Boniface Road, or to go down Fermor and head north on Murdoch Road to get to Beulah Recreation Park. It's going to be an excellent event. We put on a display second to none, and even in the height of the pandemic and thereafter, I recall in 2022 when the Forks decided not to have their Canada Day fireworks. I was not on council, but worked with the community and even the area councillor at the time, and we raised at that time almost $20,000. I've reached out to various companies that I knew, and we were able to get the fireworks going. Even Mr. Axworthy, Lloyd Axworthy, was on the radio and attacked for defending this country and the good things that we have done. Well, we wanted to make sure that there are those who still believe, even though we're a country that has made mistakes in the past and we have our faults, but we're still a proud country, and we're still, as the mayor has said, in many ways a light for other nations in the world in so many ways.
Thank you,
And
Councillor
so
Wyatt.
we're happy to celebrate, proud to be Canadians on Canada Day, and everybody's welcome to come, and we're going to have activities also during the day in the Transcona Centennial Square and everything else. So I just want to announce this, and I want to thank the members of the Transcona Business Improvement Zone, the board of directors, the volunteers, and our new executive director for all the work that has been done to make this possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. We'll get into delegations. I'd like to call forward Rochelle Squires, President and CEO of the Centre Venture Development Corporation, to be heard in support of item 13 of the report of the Executive Policy Committee dated June 17th, exemptions for fees issued during the redevelopment of vacant buildings. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor and Council. On behalf of Centre Venture Development Corporation and many of our development partners in the downtown Winnipeg, I am here today to express strong support for the motion brought forward by Councillor Duncan on June 17th to amend the vacant building bylaw. We fully support the intent of the bylaw, which is to discourage property owners from allowing buildings to sit vacant and deteriorate indefinitely, as these sites often contribute to neighborhood decline, pose safety risks, and become hubs for crime. However, the current framework does not distinguish between the absentee owners and those actively engaged in redevelopment efforts. We urge Council to consider exempting properties that are demonstrably moving toward redevelopment, where appropriate development permits have been issued, work is underway or imminent, or where municipal funding has been granted to be exempted from the fines and fees outlined within the bylaw. The financial burdens of these penalties is not insignificant. One of our partners working to convert a long vacant heritage building into vibrant residential units recently received an annual bill in excess of $60,000 under the empty building provision within the bylaw. This is in addition to an annual escalating boarded building permit fee they also must pay. This not only undermines the viability of important revitalization projects, but can discourage other developers from taking on the challenge of breathing new life into aging downtown properties. Centerventure itself successfully appealed a similar fine related to the redevelopment of our heritage property at 284 William Avenue, a project that took 3 years to complete. While we prevailed, the process was costly and time-consuming for both the developer and the city. An amendment that exempts buildings under active good faith redevelopment would remove a major barrier to investment and signal to the city's commitment to supporting revitalization efforts in the downtown core. Thank you for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our delegation? Okay, seeing none today, thank you for the presentation, Michelle. Our next delegation is Chris Lawrence from the Manitoba Heavy Construction Association to be heard in support of item 3 of the report of the Public Works Committee dated June 12th, and it's regarding the Transportation Master Plan. Welcome.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm pleased to appear this morning on behalf of the MHCA to endorse EPC's recommendations to Council to approve the proposed Transportation Master Plan. And I repeat our thanks to Councillor Lukes and the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works for their work, to Jim Berezowski, Director of Public Works, to Alec Regic and David Patman, who played monumental roles in the shaping and forming of this report. You have received my written submissions and presentations that I made at earlier events before Public Works and EPC. I don't intend to repeat those comments. Rather, I wish to reinforce that the TMP marks an important line in the sand. It does present an opportunity to shape Winnipeg's future transportation system to drive economic growth, equitable multimodal access, and social welfare. You have wisely, in our view, prioritized key areas, including the strategic road network study, goods movement, and investment in pedestrian and cycling infrastructure. The plan is being adopted during a time when the country is investing heavily in trade and transportation to build a resilient, sustainable, diverse economy. Winnipeg faces a substantial list of unfunded capital projects. The scale demands that we cannot assume ignoring economic growth and its revenue benefits will work going forward. That approach has to change. Mayor Gillingham, you and a good number of council colleagues have repeatedly spoken to the need for cities to participate directly in the economic growth and benefit flowing immediately from that growth to its return, just as provinces and federal governments do. Mayor, you asked when I appeared at EPC of the view of the construction industry at the national level on these issues, and I'm pleased to say that, having followed up, I can confirm that the Canadian Construction Association, which represents the vertical and the horizontal construction industries, speaks for more than 20,000 Canadian construction companies and 65 local construction associations, including in Manitoba, the MHCA and the Winnipeg Construction Association. It recognizes that for municipalities to achieve necessary economic growth, they need a new funding model. The CCA accordingly supports the report from the FCM, which lays out a compelling case for a new municipal growth framework. Its view is that municipalities are consistently being asked by senior levels of government to shoulder an ever-increasing share of the costs of infrastructure, housing, and essential services without having access to the revenue tools and streams needed to meet these demands. The CCA will continue in its efforts towards the common objectives of growing the economy and the importance of a new fiscal deal framework for municipalities at the national level, working with the federal government, the Big City Mayors Caucus, the FCM, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, and many other national stakeholders. And you can expect to receive a communication from the CCA to that effect. You will be voting today to hire a new CAO with extensive experience relevant to these priorities. Now is the moment, in our judgment, to task the new CAO to work with the business community on developing a role for a Chief Economic Development Officer and advancing the proposition of a new fiscal deal. This is your chance to lead, to be bold, to make history, and to lead decisively. The decision before you is whether these investment plans will deliver real benefits and position Winnipeg as an attractive, livable city, ready for greatness, or whether they will simply gather dust while Council mires in an ongoing fiscal struggle. We ask you to continue shaping our collective future, so much better enabled by embracing a focus on proactive civic steps to grow the economy as core political and civic policy functions, enabled by a long overdue new fiscal deal. That is the line in the sand, and I ask on which side you wish to be remembered for having stood on. The public believes in, supports, and needs your leadership. We urge it. You will have our vocal support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well timed.
Thank you.
We're taking questions momentarily after we hear from the next
Oh, thank
delegation.
you.
Thank you. Next is David Linton, Manager Policy of the Manitoba Trucking Association, also appearing in opposition to this item.
Thank you,
Are
Madam
you in
Speaker.
support or opposition? I believe you're in support.
We are in support.
In support, thank you.
You're welcome.
Same item, Transportation Master Plan.
Good morning. My name is David Linton. I'm the Manager of Policy for the Manitoba Trucking Association. I'm also a registered professional planner. The MTA supports the Transportation Master Plan, the TMP, because it includes goods movement. It prioritizes the refurbishment project for Route 90 and the extension of the Chief Peguis Trail. The TMP also sets the stage for a strategic road network study and a Winnipeg area transportation study. Both of these studies are important to the future of goods movement, the health of Winnipeg's trade-based economy, and the economy of the surrounding metro region. The MTA is ready to work with the public service on the recommendations in the report to Council by the Standing Policy Committee and the Executive Policy Committee. The MTA would like to thank the public service, the members of the Executive Policy Committee, and the Standing Policy Committee for supporting the recommendations which are now before Council. As was noted in an article by Gabrielle Pichet in yesterday's edition of the Winnipeg Free Press, Manitoba's economy, and by extension Winnipeg's economy, is highly dependent on trade, more so than Saskatchewan or Alberta. Deloitte has forecasted a 0.6% growth of GDP for Manitoba this year, compared to 1.3% in Alberta and 1.8% in Saskatchewan. This clearly illustrates that when trade suffers, Manitoba suffers, and so does Winnipeg. Our trade-based economy relies on goods movement, especially by truck. This includes the internal economy of the city. Throughout the consultations that led to the TMP and the new truck route map, the MTA has advocated for maintaining the connectivity, safety, and efficiency of goods movement by truck in Winnipeg. Goods movement is a core requirement of our city's transportation system, and it is why transportation is the land use that makes all other land uses viable. All urban properties depend on trucks, whether for services, pickups, deliveries, construction projects, or solid waste removal. The viability of commercial industrial properties and their value in the marketplace especially depends on their ability to be serviced by truck. As always, the MTA is ready to work with the public service to prioritize goods movement by truck while maintaining the safety of all road users. The revised truck route map provided in your materials was previously reviewed by the MTA. The city's consultant worked with the MTA in 2023 to discuss truck route changes that the industry could accept. The MTA looks forward to the implementation of the new truck route network through the timely amendment of the city's traffic bylaw. On behalf of the MTA, I thank you for your time and attention, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you, David. We'll now take questions. Chris Lawrence, if you could please come forward. Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Linton. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Lawrence and Linton, you sound like a law firm. Anyway, I just wanted to rise and say...
We provide a service.
He's the one with the law.
Hopefully better than lawyers. Anyway, I guess, reading the transportation master plan, it reads like, okay, we're doing a transportation master plan, but now we're going to do a transportation master plan with all these other studies. That should have been incorporated in the study that's coming forward now, but it's not. And the frustrating thing here is that we, as you know, as a council, have been approving development after development on greenfield lands. Only a number of weeks ago, we rezoned the entire city to allow for densities. All of this is going to add to the population of Winnipeg. We know that our population has risen by 70,000 in the last 3 years alone. And it's hard to say what that growth is going to be going forward in light of the immigration changes, but I think it's safe to say that Winnipeg is going to still keep growing, including the capital region. But yet we're a city that does not invest in new strategic infrastructure. And we can see this in the desperate steps being taken now to add truck routes onto truck routes that didn't exist before, on roads that didn't have a truck route or had been removed by this council. I'll give you an example, Plessy Road, where if we had invested, for example, in the
Councillor
Edward...
Wyatt, the question,
I'm
please.
getting to it, Madam Speaker. Edward Schreier Parkway, running south off of Chief Peguis, another section of Chief Peguis that's not been built. But here we are in Winnipeg. We build these little bits. Instead of building a comprehensive plan to implement a regional system that would actually take trucks off of going through the corner of Portage-Germain as they roll through every
Question,
day.
please.
My question is this. Right now, we have the local streets renewal reserve, and we have the regional streets renewal reserve. In other words, we have two massive reserves, and each fund grows about $7.5 by $8 million a year from the one-on-one property tax increases. It's upwards of $200 million. We as a council could tomorrow decide to borrow against that, bank it, and then start to build the
Councillor Wyatt,
infrastructure
the
we
question,
need.
please.
Why aren't we doing that as a council, making those decisions when other councils in this country have taken steps? I hear what you're saying, Mr. Lawrence, we need new funding. But we already have funding, and we could be using and leveraging our own funding now to make these
Thank you.
things
The
happen.
response, please.
Well, Madam Speaker, through you to Councillor Wyatt, I can't speak for decisions that council makes or doesn't. This is the parliament in which the decisions are made. The reality is that the making of a policy is kind of like a sausage. It's really ugly in the formative stages. You wrap it, you create the sausage, and now you decide whether you grill it, cook it, fry it, or bake it. And that's what you're going to do with the Transportation Master Plan. The Master Plan gives you the directions that you're going to take in the future in order to realize on its objectives. And one of those objectives is funding. And we have said over and over and over again in this chamber and in other chambers of this council that it is long overdue for this city, for major urban centers, to benefit by a new fiscal arrangements with senior levels of government, because the turn of the century access to revenue streams is inadequate to the continuously growing demands, not only for operations and programs and services, but capital investment. And until you bridge those realities, until you focus as a core civic function and duty to grow the economy, you're going to be mired in which fund do I take from where in order to this, in order to do that, in order to try to balance the budget. You need a chief economic development officer. You need a new fiscal plan. Your national organization is saying that. The business community and public are saying that in this province. It's time, respectfully, to listen to those calls and act on them.
Thank you. Second question.
Mr. Lawrence, with all due respect, I guess I find it frustrating because after the last civic general election, I met with the mayor and I said, we have now coming $200 million a year, growing by $15 million a year. We could borrow against that, $3-4 billion. We could actually start building this infrastructure
Wyatt,
and
question
renew.
for the
My
delegation.
question is this: we should be maximizing the tools we already have in the resources. Now we had the wisdom in 2013 and 14 to create those two funds. They're upwards of $200 million combined. we're not maximizing that by saying today that, relatively speaking, the interest rates are low still.
Thank you, Councillor
And we
Wyatt.
should borrow
You've
against to
asked
create
the
the funds to
question.
do the infrastructure you're calling for. Instead of go cap in hand to the federal government or provincial when we're not maximizing the
response,
resources we
please.
have today.
Madam Speaker, through you to Councillor Wyatt, we have a very good mayor, and I'm confident in this council.
Third question.
Pointing out to you a fact that we're not doing something that we could be doing, Mr. Lawrence, to actually build the infrastructure you're calling for.
Councillor Wyatt, thank you.
I-
You've asked the question.
No,
It's
I'm
been
asking
answered.
again. You didn't answer
It's
my
been
question.
answered. Is there anything to add?
Madam Speaker, advocacy is a marathon, never a sprint.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Lawrence,
Speaker,
and I'm
Mayor,
a vegetarian. Thank you about the sausage analogy. Okay. All right. That concludes our delegations today. Next is reports of the Executive Policy Committee. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe there's an amending motion on the first
Yes.
item 6.
Yes.
So I'll wait to hear from my colleague who's introducing the amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Proposed asphaltic concrete lane local improvement on block bounded by Dunraven Avenue, Blenheim Avenue, St. Mary's Road, and Overton Street.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you've said you'd like to hear from the mover of the amending motion. That would be Councillor Mays. Go ahead.
Firstly, thanks to the clerk for saying asphaltic in honor of Councillor Allard, who has trained us for years not to say asphaltic, but rather asphaltic. Well done, Mr. Clerk. People on this one block changed their views on this project, perhaps due to cost, perhaps due to property tax increases, perhaps due to the change we will be voting on later today. In fact, about threeplexes, fourplexes not being permitted on gravel lanes. So this was actually one I think I initiated. In short, there's no longer the will of the ratepayers to proceed with the project. So thanks to Councillor Gilroy, longtime ally on these gravel lanes issues, thanks to Councillor Gilroy, I'm moving to simply receive it as information, not proceed with the paving project. So I would ask that you all support the amendment and we put this one to rest.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I support Councillor Mays and Councillor Gilroy's motion to receive as info. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question on the amending motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. And the item is amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Next is the report of June 17th, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will introduce the report and move adoption of consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd like to pull 5.
Okay, pulling 5, yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'd like to pull 12, please. And then 13, 14, and 15. So basically moving
Yes.
all except 5 and
Thank you.
12, please.
Call the question on, microphone, please.
Can we pull number 8 and number 14?
Okay. All right, I'll call the question on 1 through 4. Councillor Orlico?
I'd like to pull number 8.
Number 8 has been pulled, Financial Stabilization Reserve Plan.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll pull, I'll call the question on 1 through 4, 6 and 7, 9 through 11, and 13, and 15. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Mr. Clerk, item 5.
Item 5, Youth Programming Fund 2025 to 2027.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to simply rise to say thank you to councillors and members of our administration who've worked so hard on the list that is before us of the organizations that are working with young people and supporting young people. We know in our community that there's, among other things, there's too much youth crime in our community. So there are many organizations throughout the city, some specifically in high needs areas, but not limited to high needs areas, that are working with young people to give young people opportunity for recreation, arts, after-school programming to give them positive peer environments and good mentors and role models. And so through this last budget, by increasing our funding to these youth organizations, about $1 million total per year over the next 3 years, split up into 17 different allocations that are outlined here. What we're doing is we're trying to make an investment in young people in our community, in part to help prevent young people from getting down the wrong path, but also just for those young people who would always choose the right path, if I can say it that way, to reinforce our commitment to them as a community, to give them opportunity to be invested in their lives and hopefully reaffirm the good decisions that they're making already as young people. Also to say thank you to the organizations who are doing the good work. Many of them have been on the ground doing good work, and frankly for decades. And so it is our investment in them to affirm and encourage the work that they have been doing, asking them through these investments to continue to do that work, showing that we value them as a city. And so, again, I'm really pleased to see these 17 organizations. I want to thank them on behalf of all of us for the good work that they're doing, and hope that all councils will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Lukes?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate what the mayor said regarding the organizations. And I want to thank the City of Winnipeg IT Data and Applied Services Management Division for preparing an updated map of the geographic areas of high poverty based on the 2021 census. And if you look at that map, you'll see something that I don't think a lot of people really would assume. And you'll see that in South Winnipeg, you'll see a high area of poverty in South Winnipeg. Those of us who work in South Winnipeg, Councillor Chambers, who's not here today, myself, we know this. The school division, the trustees, they know it, and the MLAs know it. We've put together a little task force amongst elected officials to try and deal with many of the issues that we're seeing that stem from poverty. And when you look at some of the downtown areas in the city, and you look at the data that's been provided by the IT department, it's actually quite unbelievable that the Daniel Mack, Fort Rouge East, Fort Garry, Mynarski wards, the next that has the next highest level of poverty is the Waverley West ward, and it only varies by 0.1 percentage point from the Mynarski ward. So I really want to thank the departments for putting this information together to provide a clear visual and numerical overview of what's happening in our city and what's happening in South Winnipeg, contrary to a very popular belief that South Winnipeg is very affluent. Basically, it's the second highest area of poverty compared to downtown. So I just would like to thank the department on that.
Thank you, Councillor Mays, then Councillor Wyatt.
Somewhat to echo Councillor Lukes' words, I have some concerns with the report, but the line was going to be drawn somewhere, whether it was after 6 wards or 7 wards or 5 wards. On all these things, you draw the line somewhere. I agree with Councillor Lukes that there are areas of poverty outside of the core, though obviously there is more poverty in the core. The area with the lowest median income, the neighborhood with the lowest median income outside the core is in my ward, and Councillor Rollins actually talked about this a fair bit, given her experience as a school trustee and when she was chair of community services. She was well aware of this, to her credit. So there's nothing in this report for that community. I've talked to the mayor about that. I will probably come back at some point with some programming or some ideas. Really, the city hasn't done anything in the Morrow Avenue area. The Salvation Army, to its credit, really has, since they opened about 14 years ago. So there are certainly pockets of poverty, areas of poverty outside the core. Councillor Luke's spoken at length about her experiences, and that's valuable, I think. But also from a St. Vital context, Nancy Allen, and it's been a while since Nancy Allen was in office. Nancy Allen and I put in a splash pad on Morrow Avenue, and I'm reluctant to say the city really hasn't done anything since then. I've used award funds for various projects I won't bore you with, but I would like to come back at some point and talk a bit more and see if we can do something in the budget for certain areas. But insofar as the report goes, I agree with Councillor Lukes. Actually, it's useful to have a data breakdown like this. It does show Waverley West having, as Councillor Lukes said, quite a high percentage, which you wouldn't think intuitively. So I think it's a good educational tool. So I'll be supporting it today, probably come back at some point with some thoughts. We're building an outdoor classroom at St. George School, which serves the Morrow Avenue neighborhood. So hopefully we can do something along those lines elsewhere in these areas. You'll notice there's one of the concentrated areas, the blue dots. That's even further south. That's Marlene Street in my ward. So again, I'll be supporting the report. And I think Councillor Lukes makes some valuable points about where we find poverty and the need to do something about it.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Wyatt.
Point out what's in the report. I think it's there for everybody to see. It should be pointed out that 17 organizations here are being funded. However, 118 were lined up for funding, according to the report. That's what I read, which means that 101 organizations received nothing, though they were organizations that probably had similar needs and funding. And I just want to point out as well, Madam Speaker, for the last 40 years or more, especially in North America, we have been co-opted or jumped in fully with the New Right agenda, which started with the writings of Milton Friedman in the 1970s out of the Harvard, Yale, where he worked from, professor, who argued that, well, we have this thing called stagflation. It's because high government spending has caused the economy to overheat, and what we got to do is cut government spending. Of course, what Mr. Friedman failed to tell the world was that the high government spending was not related to social programs. It was related to the Cold War and the mass production of military arms and the Vietnam War that was going on at the time that basically drove inflation through the roof and caused the phenomenon of stagflation, where you had inflation but no economic growth, which didn't make any sense at the time. Well, that's how it happens when you build bombs that don't stay in the economy. You blow them up as they dropped in Vietnam, more bombs than all the bombs dropped on World War II combined on the poor nation of Vietnam and Cambodia. And we like to forget these things, Madam Speaker, and we like to forget that we bought into an ideology that has cut government for the last 40 years, sent a message to the public that government can't do anything for them, to turn things around, to make their lives better, and we're still suffering under those consequences at every level of government in this country, including this level of government. And we should be reminded of that, because this is what's driving the poverty across the country. We're the working family. Never mind the official poverty rate, but even the working family who's trying to make ends meet. If you're not a double income family, and if you're single and you're trying to make a go of it, it's a hell of a time out there for many people. And even families that have double incomes are struggling across this country and in this province and in this city. And it's because we bought into this ideology of the trickle-down effect. Cut government, cut the taxes on the rich, and maybe a little bit will trickle down to you at the bottom, was the idea. Well, it hasn't worked, Madam Speaker. What has it created? A country, we're now top 5 in the world of billionaires. A country that has allowed basically one family now to control 80% of our food distribution system. We have a country where wealth concentration has occurred, and there's only so much money, Madam Speaker, in the economy. It's not infinite, it's finite. And when you concentrate wealth at the top, it basically takes away the ability to share resources with everybody. And yet we live in one of the richest countries in the world, bestowed by our Creator with massive resources that any other country in the world would envy. And yet the poverty rates have gone through the roof. And we wonder why people on social media are buying into the conspiracy theories out there. Well, they're frustrated. And what I tell them is follow the money. Follow the money. Because that will point the way to the truth. And the fact that we have a tax system still in this country that rewards the wealthy and punishes the working family, the fact that we have a government that just forced us to do a massive rezoning of our city that is now going to actually single-handedly drive up the price of lots for the very people who want to get into the market and buy a home. The fact that we have a system in place that has allowed, since the 1980s, a phenomenon called homelessness, where we now have in cities tens of thousands of people living in their streets, living in tent cities, living on rivers. No, we're not. We're talking exactly the issues why we're here having this report, Madam Speaker. And maybe Councillor Brulati doesn't like to hear this because it's the truth. And it taxes ideology to the core.
Councillor
And I
Brulati,
get
thank
that.
you. It's Councillor's opportunity to speak.
Yes, and I'm
To the
saying,
item?
Madam, this is what the item's all about, Councillor Brulati.
Councillor Wyatt.
This is why we have to do this
Councillor
now,
Wyatt.
because of
Councillor Wyatt, you've been given some leeway. There is a report before us that's outlining funding to specific organizations and organizations in Transcona. So let's hear from that. Thank you.
At one time, Madam Speaker, you know, the Conservatives actually, I mean, you had Duff Roblin, you had John Bracken. They actually believed in government. They actually believed that you could make things happen. I mean, if it wasn't for Roblin, we wouldn't have had the Winnipeg floodway. Saved the city many times. But they didn't believe in the new right agenda. But then it came along Brian Mulroney, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and we've been living this ever since. And it's been every level of government, all the way down. But the tradition of the Conservative Party before was not one of the new right agenda. It
Councillor
was one
Wyatt,
of
we
being
appreciate the history lesson, but
I am
please
coming
speak
back
the
to it right now.
report.
Madam Speaker, my point is this. We have such a need. This is $1 million. It's wonderful that we're doing this. But the reality is we shouldn't have to be doing this. This should be a to deal with poverty. We live in a country, as we know, and we're talking about poverty here, and I like Councillor Lukes for raising that issue. But we live in a country, Madam Speaker, since 1867, we have a tax system where basically we bestowed most of the powers on the federal government, and we're not even considered under the constitutional level of government, though the public thinks we are. We are basically, Madam Speaker, today struggling to try to help these groups and organizations out there who are basically putting a Band-Aid on the problem out there to try to keep things from breaking out in the streets and having people marching because they can't make ends meet. But that day may be coming, because you know what? You can only push working families so far and push people so far. And if governments don't start to respond by building in the progressive systems, which actually, Madam Speaker, we had before they were dismantled after World War II, we could restore and bring back actually a capitalist system that actually works. And that's what's not working today, Madam Speaker. It's killing this country and it's killing working families. And we're going to, and $1 million is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket of what we must do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to speak to this, but I'm going to begin. Of course, I'm voting for this, and I'd like to first talk about that the city is allocating more money, Madam Speaker, to youth programming in poverty areas. And to give more of a history, like, I don't know about the world capitalist system and free, but to be clear, Madam Speaker, when I was a youth in the early, mid-70s, there were homeless young people of my age out there because home wasn't necessarily the best place to be, so we were out on the streets, Madam Speaker. Existed before 1980. There were homeless people. I remember a gentleman who lived in an apartment block across from where the convention center was built. It was dilapidated and almost ready to fall down, and there was a man living in there because that's the only, he couldn't afford to pay rent. So he was actually living in there, Madam Speaker. Living in a vacant apartment block in bad condition. So homeless people did exist, but Madam Speaker, there were a number of initiatives. The City of Winnipeg, through an agenda of rationalizing city spending, decisions were made in the 90s to cut funding for people working with community centers from the city, various types of programming, Madam Speaker. It was basically gutted because the council at the time decided that, well, roads were more important and so on. And so I don't want to be long, so I'll just simply say this. This council, there are some people with different ideologies around, Madam Speaker, but practically what we're doing is we know we need to invest more money to help kids keep out of trouble, help them work towards getting their education, because we know that education is so important in order to have success in your adult life. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm proud enough, and it was difficult to decide what organizations, Madam Speaker, would receive extra money. And it does demonstrate that we have limited dollars. We could use continued more investment towards that programming for youth, not in education, that's up to the schools. And there probably are some schools in the Riel School Division who are providing programming for youth in the poverty areas in St. Vital, I believe. There used to be some programs I was aware of, but Madam Speaker, yeah, this is a good news report, and I can't wait to hear back. I believe with this funding, Madam Speaker, the organizations will be reporting the success that they've had by utilizing the dollars here.
Thank you, Councillor Eady. Mr. Mayor, your opportunity to close, if you wish.
I want to thank through the many comments, the support for these organizations who are doing good work. Again, I want to take the opportunity just to express our gratitude for their investment in the next generation of our community, and I look forward to everyone supporting this report, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? That's carried. Okay. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Item 8, Financial Stabilization Reserve Replenishment Plan, interim measures.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item.
Yeah, I want to just express my appreciation, Madam Speaker, on this report to both Councillor Verwadi as our Finance Chair for his work and his team for his work with our CFO, Tracy Graham, on finding a way to begin the reestablishment and the replenishment of the Financial Stabilization Reserve. We know that currently the reserve is well below the council mandated target. This doesn't get us all the way back to target levels, but what is being proposed here does get us part way as a first step to getting that reserve replenished. And so I'm hoping that councillors support the report that is before us as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have an amending motion going with this item. Motion 5, moved by Councillor Orlikow, seconded by Councillor Dobson. Councillor Orlikow, your opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. So this is just so everybody's well aware that this one as well, the amending motion and the motion that's presently will require 2/3 vote. It was tried during the budget process and failed to pass 2/3 vote, so let's do that again. But for the initial one, but this one here, the reason why it needs 2/3 vote is, and I had some conversations with the mayor, and he expressed some concerns about the generalness of what I wanted, which was to deal with the fact that I wanted to keep the money in the ward, don't we all, rather than putting it into the FSR, which again, let's face it, this FSR is nothing more. This is not going to be replenished in the FSR. I wish it would. It'll be used to be able to balance a budget coming up. That's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't. The FSR rules that we changed a while back there really made and that's why we keep draining it out all the time, it really made it into a general purpose reserve that we use to balance our budget. So the FSR will never have a chance to grow unless we actually deal with our budget problems. The zipper is absolutely massive. So again, I have no expectation that this, as we call it, the replenishing plan for the FSR, let's call it what it is, a temporary replenishing plan for the FSR, which is really not the FSR anymore. It's really a general revenue fund. So again, so I see that's going to happen, and I have gone back in the past, and I've tried to be very transparent with some of my budget items and requests. I think last year I was called, I'm not sure what I was called, for bringing up commercial taxation, which again, publicly I did to EPC and tried again later on. But again, we haven't, in the River Heights, Fort Garry ward, and especially the Beaumont area, which is just getting compacted by so many things, massive developments happening left, right, and center of it. They're going to be the housing accelerator fund. These Beaumont neighborhood is going to be massively affected by that. So again, I understood what the mayor said. Well, this can't go to Victoria Community Center. It has to be to what the purpose of the fund was. The purpose of the fund was is payments to the thing, but it's also payments to build an accessible, connected BRT route. That includes sidewalks. That includes, and this is taken from the administration, these recommendations here. These are the things that are still missing within the BRT station, mostly the Georgina station. There's a couple other ones in here. And their sidewalks and their AT paths. Now, why don't I just wait until the budget time and ask for this stuff? I have no belief I'm ever going to get anything anymore on the budget. I think there's going to be such a tight line. I've tried a couple of years in a row now, received very little, if anything. So again, I'll be very transparent. This is my model to try to be able to capture some of that money so we can actually finish the BRT station, the connectivity. We have places right now where people from Beaumont can't even walk. They have to walk on the street around, even though the street, Beaumont Street itself now is astronomically packed with cars because especially, and we haven't got the Fulton Grove development happening yet. We have another massive development probably coming later on in the actual neighborhood itself. So I want to make sure that people who want to bike there, they want to walk to the Georgina station, as we say, that is part of the BRT integrated project. Accessibility is very key. So instead of hoping and praying that I'll get some money in the budget time to address these issues, I said, okay, before this goes into the general purpose reserve and be used for other purposes to balance the budget so we don't have to increase taxes more than they will probably have to, I said, okay, let's finish the BRT project. Let's actually put it to where it should go. This is part of the BRT project. So these are not Victoria Community Center. These aren't the walking path around the retention pond. These aren't those things. These are directly related from the administration when I asked, is there parts of the BRT route here that we haven't finished off, which you would like to see in the budget to be finished? So these recommendations, which is the sidewalk on Beaumont, multi-use path on Seal and Fennel, and a multi-use path on Hearst to Wilson, these are all part of the project where they've identified transit and public works and parks have all identified areas where there are gaps. So instead of hoping for later on that maybe the council will figure out a way to do this, which I really don't believe, maybe it will happen, I don't know. I want to be able to retain this money to be able to actually finish a job that we started, and it is a fantastic job. I got to say, the BRT station, what's happening along there, the numbers are already increasing. Again, even the BRT stations are causing some problems, especially in the Beaumont neighborhood, because it's really changing mostly the traffic dynamics. I know we always say people walk there, bus there. A lot of buses going down those streets now that weren't there before. So again, it's another impact. So if we can get more people to be able to access Georgina through sidewalks and through asphalt path, this way we can secure that, do the project, finish the project that we wanted to do again. So that's why, and again, I didn't take it all. There were other projects in here. I understand there is a balance between balancing the budget and this. So it was about up to 1.5 million, which may not all be able to be spent. The administration were quite clear on that. They may have to deal with one of these projects deals with Manitoba Hydro, so they're going to have to give us the okay to go in that land. Another project, they're not too sure about the underground surfacing that may or may not be required. So again, this model is really very transparently, let's finish the project, let's keep the project in some of this cash in the ward. Let's also allow, though, of course, the 2.2 million of this money to go to the FSR, and my hope and my prayer that we actually will build up the FSR, not drain it off again at the end of the year, because I am also terrified about the fact that our FSR, which is not really the FSR anymore, which I'll address at a later date probably, needs to be replenished. The world is scary. Things are happening all over the place. Right now we have no security blanket, nothing to be able to deal with major things. And I know we said COVID was one. I kind of gave it on that, but we've carried this on since those days. This was a COVID thing at the beginning. Now it's really just a way to actually not be able to, we're supposed to have a replenishing plan. We still don't have a replenishing plan. It's been how many years? This is not a plan. This is just a tip in the money in and take out. It's in and out money. So again, it's not a plan. I wish we had a plan that says this is how we are going to replenish it. And one of the ways we can replenish it is by stop using the FSR as a general revenue reserve that is used to balance our budgets. So again, we have other means through fees, taxes, service cuts to do that kind of stuff. But again, I don't believe that money, what they call it, enriching the FSR is actually an accurate term. It's really just an in and out. I don't have any faith to say that we're not going to touch the FSR or this fund, a fiscal stabilization reserve, or I'm not sure what they even call it now. We need to be able to have some in the fund, and again, we're going to have a little bit there, so 2.2, but the $1.5 million, if it is all spent, won't be. It will have to go somewhere else after in the area. But let's finish the Beaumont Station. Primarily, there's some other ones in here. Let's connect it. Let's make it accessible. Let's make it safe. And let's keep investing in where that money should go, not into general revenue. So thank you. Oh, and no required 2/3 vote. I'll be transparent about that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Orlikow. Next, Councillor Lukes, followed by Councillor Parwati.
So I want to rise to speak to Councillor. Is it my turn or no?
Okay,
Okay.
Councillor Wyatt did indeed stand the item down, so I'll
Okay.
defer to him. Councillor Wyatt?
I mean, this history of this fund goes way back, Madam Speaker. It's important to point these things out, that its origins actually reside in what the 1990 reassessment scandal that occurred here in the city of Winnipeg, when the assessment department of the city did not predict or estimate a massive reassessment that was underway, led by a brilliant lawyer by the name of Mike Mercury, who led and represented many of the major corporations in the downtown of the city. It triggered the resignation of the city assessor, the gentleman's named Dave Brown. At the time, we had the board of the chief commissioners, and Peter Kaufman would like to tell the story that basically, up until that point, he was on council. They would always ask them, we need money for this and money for that. They would always say, we don't have any money for you, sorry. The board of commissioners would say that. And then all of a sudden, when this fiasco happened, which was $300 million plus, that they had to find a shortfall in terms of finding the money that was now had been reassessed down on the city based on the reassessments of the brilliant Mike Mercury going to the appeal mechanisms at that time to appeal their assessments. Believe it or not, the Board of Commissioners found it. They raided every reserve in the city to find it, and Kaufman said that was the day that the Board of Commissioners hammered the nail into their coffin when they were shown to be what they were, which was not truthful and honest with council, that they did have money hidden in lots of pishkas, as the saying goes. And so, Madam Speaker, we have this fiscal stabilization fund. Now, I'm reading this report, and I find it interesting, because I recall in a recent budget, not too long ago, that there was a commitment that a Caspian settlement against Caspian, 20 million plus, was supposed to be coming into this fund. I think this is the same fund. I don't know of any other fiscal stabilization fund, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's nothing referenced in this report about it. And it was $20 million plus. We were assured by then the CAO of the city, Mike Jack, in meetings across the way, that we would have the ability to cash that in. We had claims against their assets, and that we could exercise those and put that money into the fiscal stabilization reserve, or financial stability, as we call it now. But I don't see that here. And I'm wondering what happened. I mean, am I talking about the same fund? I think I am. I don't know of any other fund like this. I know we dropped it down to, I think, what is it, 6% now in terms of our target. But, you know, Madam Speaker, why does this report not reference that? This was something put out in a recent budget since the last general election in this city, a commitment made that that funding would be there from Caspian, who we had a lawsuit against, and we were told that 20 million plus in assets would be going into this fund, and it's not here, and it's nowhere in the report. And so I'd like to know why before I vote on it. And maybe other members, and that's why I wanted to speak first, Madam Speaker, and that's why I pulled it off the agenda, so that maybe there's an opportunity for some members of council who are on EPC to enlighten me on that. Because it's very concerning that it's not even referenced. Now, maybe it's referenced in a way. There's that part of the report here on page 5, where it says attachment 2 of the 2025 budget recommendations. Maybe that's the way they're referencing it, but I like to see it in black and white in the report, because that was the major recourse, was my understanding, that was outlined, of how we were going to replenish this fund. And why are we not cashing in those assets that Mike Jack said we could? If they have not made their payments to us, we were going to exercise that right. That has not happened here.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt.
And I'm I'm not finished yet, Madam Speaker, I have a few minutes, and I'm very concerned. Because ultimately, I do believe we could be facing a similar crisis coming forward, maybe not to the same extent I pray as 1990, but we now know, partly because we as a city and other levels of government have refused to order or request that our workers come back to their offices in the downtown. We have now set up a potential scenario where we could see another reassessment taking place on the downtown on a large scale that could gut projections going forward in terms of our property taxes. And that scares the heck out of me, because you see empty office towers in this downtown, and you see the fact that more and more people are working from home, and we've kind of encouraged that as a level of government. We're not leading by example to support the downtown by saying, everybody, okay, the pandemic's over, come back to work, which is I wish we would do, because I frankly believe productivity levels are higher and there's better support and better learning and training and just sharing of knowledge and wisdom amongst employees when they're together, that we lose, as well as customer service, who, I talk to people who go and pull permits, whether it be for a building permit or development permit, or an application for rezoning, and you could go down to, Gary Street, and you could fire a cannon through there or not hit anybody. It's like, it's a ghost town, when we should be trying to create a buzzing, an effect of excitement and a buzz in the downtown to get folks out there again and to make it vibrant again. We've got the arts community who just had their jazz festival, the streets were full, but yet government is kind of missing the boat on the whole thing. It was interesting, we have Ms. Squires here, brand new head of Center Venture, not one question, just walks away, and there's a sense, I can tell you, much of the private sector who have taken interest in the downtown, that they're walking. They've had it. They've had it rising construction costs. They're making applications on the HAF. They get their application cut in half. And frankly, they can't cut their project in half, but their application for funding is cut in half. And they're just thinking, well, you know what? Maybe the day has come where just take our investments, invest in other cities that are more interested, or just elsewhere, period. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm very concerned about this. I hope there can be some information shed on why the Caspian settlement is not referenced at all in this report, when that was clearly outlined 2 budgets ago to this council. And there's been really no update on it since. And I know I have one resident in my community who comes into my office probably every few months and asks me, have you asked this of the mayor? Have you asked this of council? And now I'm taking this opportunity to do this, so I could get back to him and say, yes, I've followed up on this, and I'm curious to hear what others have to say on EPC. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Lukes, followed by Councillor Barwadi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to address Councillor Orliko's concerns. Before I was elected, I sat on the advisory committee for the Phase 2 of the transit corridor in the active transportation capacity. And yes, there are some missing links and there are some pieces that aren't done. And just as there are further south on the rapid transit corridor. But I think that if we look at the active transportation budget that we have laid out for the next 6 years, it's $92 million. And of that, starting in 2027, there are millions that are unallocated. It's called various, it's on page 38 of your budget book, various projects funding to be allocated. Millions, 2.5, 6.5, 7.3, 7.5. So I am more confident putting this money into the fiscal stabilization reserve to build up that reserve and work with the funding that is set aside in the active transportation budget that's unallocated, that the department hasn't pegged for any specific projects, and working with Councillor Orlikow and the department to complete those missing gaps. So I hear him 100% that we want to get these missing gaps. We built this corridor before we run around and build a bunch of other corridors. Let's finish what we've done. I've said that multiple times. I agree with that. But I just think taking this funding and putting it in the fiscal stabilization reserve is a better move when we have unallocated funding in the active transportation budget. So I will be supporting transferring this money into the fiscal stabilization reserve, knowing that we have funding that's unallocated in the active transportation budget. So I just want to put that on the record.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Barwadi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to start by thanking the Finance Department and my colleagues on Council, specifically the Budget Savings Group, which consists of Councillor Allard, Councillor Duncan, and myself, for taking a very fine look at savings opportunities throughout the city organization. It's a big organization, and there's a lot of people that say, hey, can we not find better savings, in our fleet management agency, in the way we operate the parking authority, in the way we deliver all sorts of municipal services without affecting those frontline services that Winnipeggers care about. We spent a lot of time, and we're inching along and finding little pieces here, little pieces there. In terms of some of the specific questions Councillor Wyatt was bringing up, if we look back at the March 7th Finance Committee Q4 update, at the end of 2024, a $22.5 million receivable was recognized for the Caspian settlement of the police headquarters. That helped make 2024 whole, if you will, but that was received as a receivable on our books and recognized financially at the end of 2024. When Council adopted the settlement agreement with Caspian, there was a payment schedule. If they pay by this date, this is how much they owe. If they pay by this date, and at the end of it, we are apparently entitled to take certain properties as collateral, if you will, that we could liquidate at some point if we're not paid at the end of the time schedule that's there. Again, if they were to pay this within the time frame that I think expired earlier this year, that amount was $22.5 million. I'm not aware of any payments that have been made to date, but I'm not necessarily kept completely in the loop on that. In terms of what's being proposed here, I appreciate Councillor Orlikow is trying to get some improvements to some infrastructure in his own ward. I would like to point out that the federal government, just as recently as last year, has set aside a fairly significant amount of money with 3 separate funding streams for permanent ongoing transit infrastructure. There's a set amount, which is sort of a guaranteed amount, and there are 2 other programs that you can actually apply for. And some of that is actually for that type of transit-related active transportation infrastructure. I think we do need to push upon our transit staff to ensure that we do apply and give them a bundle of infrastructure that is related to transit, that is not even necessarily buses, but things like sidewalks. And in that application-based piece, beyond the $11 or $12 million that we're sort of guaranteed, if you will, I think we should be applying to make sure we can get some of those other envelopes. So while I will not be voting for the amending motion here, I really do think that there's some good news stories here. Going back to why we have that surplus on that program, during the 8 years of time when Brian Bowman was the mayor of Winnipeg, the budget increases every year were strictly for capital. 1% for the local roads reserve, 1% for regional streets and bridges, and the 0.33% was always dedicated to that Southwest Rapid Transit Reserve. As it turns out, that 0.33 that was sort of dedicated, and again requires that 2/3 vote of council to change, we're collecting, there's too much money in that particular pot. Our P3 payments that we need to continue making, there's a surplus there. So this is an opportunity to get that money backed out. And again, I would remind everybody, we are not starving transit. We are now investing more than ever before when it comes to our transit operating. We're now, into 9 figures on transit. The increases there are greater than almost any department within the city operation in terms of the year-over-year increases. If you go look at the streets right now, but new bus shacks everywhere to help implement the new frequent transit network that's, of course, launching on Sunday. So, again, I thank the members of the public service, Tracy Graham, our CFO, Lisa Pablo and her whole team, some staff in the mayor's office, Destiny Watt and Brian Kelsey, who are helping with these exercises. There's a lot more work to do. You're right, we need to get back to that 6%, and this is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brawadi. Next speaker, Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, a procedural question. I don't know if my time should start since I have a point of order type of question for the clerks, which is the 2/3 majority vote needed would apply both to the original report in that the money wouldn't be used for Southwest Rapids Transitway, and in addition, that would apply to Councillor Orliko's amending motion, and then inevitably there are only 15 of us, not 16 of us. So it's
10 is suspension today, and yes to both votes, the amending motion and the main report. So 2/3 is required.
Two-thirds not of the people in the building, but 2/3, or people not in the building, no offense to Councillor Allard, 2/3 of those, you need 10 votes. Both of these would need 10 votes.
Is it 10 votes, Mr. Clerk, if you can clarify?
Yeah, it's got to be right. Unless it's 11.
10 votes.
Okay, so 10 votes. This one might be one where the parties need to have a little talk over lunch, because I can see perhaps nothing passing here, depending on how things work through. Okay, so it is important to note how we got here. We got here because we created a bus rapid transit phase 2, Southwest Rapid Transitway, that fed down from Jubilee Station further south. I voted for it. I voted for the funding mechanism. The funding mechanism requires a 2/3. Sorry, Madam Speaker, having trouble concentrating here. There's a lot of 2/3.
Councillor Mays has the floor, please. Thank you.
You need a 2/3 majority to use this for anything other than the Southwest Rapid Transitway. Pretty good summary by Councillor Brawadi of the financial situations and the P3 payments. Pretty good summary, except there are certainly costs of the rapid transitway that have not been fully captured to date. Councillor Orlikow, I think, points to some of those that are in his ward, or the pedestrian implications, keeping in mind that, I'm sorry again, Madam Speaker, can we just have one conversation in chamber?
Councillors, speaker is being distracted by side conversations. Thank you. Councillor Mays.
Thanks. So, 2/3 vote needed. Why? Because of the importance of the Southwest Rapid Transitway. So, there are certainly costs arising from that that have not been fully captured yet. For example, we are soon headed into a public hearing, whether of this body or simply of Planning Committee, on the federal government transit requirements that you don't need to have parking minimums within 800 meters of higher order transit. Namely, the Southwest Rapid Transitway is in that sense. So I think it's understandable from Councillor Orlikow to say, look, I'm going to have a lot more pedestrian issues here to get around the neighborhood, to get to the Rapid Transitway. Can you help me out a bit here? There's always concerns about if you fight for funding and then the project comes in under budget and the staff simply take it and allocate it to something else. I get that. This isn't quite the case here. You'll remember our Garden City Track project was partly funded by something in my ward coming in under budget, and we got that money shoveled over into the Garden City Track, to our credit. So it's not an exact analogy here, but I appreciate Councillor Orlikow's frustration, which is, look, I've got the benefit of this thing, but there are side effects as well. There are side effects in the Beaumont neighborhood. There are going to be more side effects once we do the no parking minimums. So you're going to have more densification, more parking on the street. You need some sidewalks. Bluntly, you need some AT pathways. Councillor Luke's, to her credit, is saying help is on the way. It should be on the way. There's unallocated money, but we don't know how that's going to get allocated in future budgets. So a bit of a balancing act here. I support Councillor Orliko's amendment, which I didn't quite understand until we got debating here. So this is not simply taking money from some unspecified account or some road project that came in under budget. This is, hey, Southwest Rapid Transitway has a surplus. Let's use some of that to deal with the side effects of the Southwest Rapid Transitway. So I'd be in favor of the amending motion. Hopefully we can get this flowing. But keep in mind, there are implications from that Southwest Transitway. We will be voting to abolish parking minima, depending on, I'll get Councillor Ellard's grammatical advice on that at some later date, parking minima for threeplexes, fourplexes near this higher order transit. Well, I think we kind of owe it to the people in that neighborhood to say, yeah, but we're going to help you out. We're going to do some more sidewalk work, some more AT pathway work. So I didn't really understand this until I got here, but I will be supporting the amending motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. No further speakers. Councillor Orlikow yes, to close on your amending motion.
So it was interesting comments, and I do appreciate it, and I understand some of the concerns about what I've heard. But, you know, so one moment I'm hearing, well, they have lots of money. There's lots of money in these budgets, so don't worry about it. Well, the unallocated funds over here, we've invested massive amounts in transit over there, so why do you need some more? Well, again, I don't know where that money's going to go. We had the same thing last year when I advocated for the Wellington Crescent plan, which will be forthcoming shortly. I've seen it, but I won't divulge any of my information so far. But again, it needs money. And I was told then at the budget, don't worry about it, Councillor Orlikow, there's lots of unallocated funds in the budget for AT. Don't worry about it. You don't need to allocate any money today for that. I go, well, I'm a little leery on trusting the process on that because I've really seen it in the past. And I'm back here again. Now I'm back here again. They're saying, well, there's lots of unallocated money that's in the AT plan, so don't worry about it, Councillor Orlikow. We'll deal with it later. Well, sorry, I don't trust you. I know you can do your best, but I need to do what I know is right today, not hope for tomorrow. So I'm not hoping for tomorrow. I've done 3 budgets now, and they've all been quite, for River Heights, Fort Garry, sad. So I want to make sure that we secure the funds today, not hope for tomorrow. I think Councillor Bowati, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Allard, and Council the General are going to have a brutal budget coming up. Brutal. Prior to an election year, there's going to be very, very strong focus on not increasing property taxes, no matter what that means. Again, we're going to find some efficiencies. Not sure what that means yet. We talked about that at Finance, and I've had some really good chats with the chair on it. But again, what I am doing here today is say, you know what, if you're asking me to hope that we'll get the money and the budget process, I'm not really interested in doing that, thank you very much. I want to do it today. I want to make sure that money gets secured. This isn't going to, again, it's not going to, and again, if someone said to me, John, don't worry, the FSR won't be touched for the budget. Well, I've talked to our CFO, that is not so. That is not so at all. It will be used, she didn't say it will be used, but it definitely could be used. And I've been around, oh my gosh, 16, 17, 18 years now. I know how it works. They're going to try to there'll be a group of, all of us will decide. We're going to have to make some choices. But it's going to happen that we're going to tap back into the FSR, or where this fund's called, because really the general purpose reserve now, to try to balance our budget off. So maybe not, but again, that's another hope I have to have. So again, I'm not asking for hope. I'm asking, let's do what's right, as Councillor May said. I didn't want to bring up the transit one because we haven't voted on that yet. So you're going to have these massive developments going on in the Beaumont neighborhood with some streets with no sidewalks to connect to Georgina. We're going to have AT paths that are going to stop. They're not there to get to these places. So again, that's what this one's here for. And again, there was many other projects I wanted to put on here. The Victoria Community Center, I have no more LDR. My LDR is dwindled out because we decided to get rid of LDR. So I can't invest in Victoria Community Center. I have a little community center. We just got a recent report back in about reconditioning the field. Well, there's no drainage, and we all know what that means. Astronomical amounts of money that I have to put it somewhere, find money for that project. We talked a little earlier about the fact that the spray pads. Well, Councillor Luke pointed out she does have areas of poverty in her neighborhood. Well, so do I. I'm going to have a lot more coming up shortly, too. but I didn't get a spray pad, even though it's part of our Victoria Community Centre plan. I didn't get anything on that one. So again, history has proven that River Heights Fort Garry Ward has not received very much out of these budgets. There are some citywide things that I'm very happy about, but again, I am a ward councillor. So again, today's decision was to, hey, John, just hope we'll do our best and we'll see how it goes. I'm sorry, that's not my job. My job is to try to represent the neighborhood. So I'm not asking for the whole 3.7, which I easily could have spent on the Victoria Community Centre. I could easily spent that on the dog park, that we have a big problem with the dog park with the large dogs and the small dogs. And way too many people showing up at this dog park right now. It's the gem of the city almost. Didn't put that in there. Kelrossi Pond, people have carved out a nice pathway around there. Again, didn't put that in there. Again, out of the respect for the process, the respect for what the mayor was saying, that this is not a ward slush fund, I'm going to say that specifically. He's right. It's a BRT fund. It's a fund to fund BRT, the connectivity with BRT. So again, I know, and again, I do have the opportunity, because to make this pass, I will vote for the second one if you vote for my one. So vote for this one today, then you may get the 2/3 to do the other one. But again, if you're not going to be able to respect the Beaumont neighborhood and the River Heights Fort Garry neighborhood by actually completing the BRT project, I won't be supporting the initial report either. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do appreciate the councillors' dedication to these projects and wanting to get these complete. I won't be supporting this, though, the amending motion. These projects listed, all important projects, they really are, all good projects. What we must do is we must balance our budget every year. We do have we have council-imposed target of $85 million to be the target for the FSR right now. We're nowhere close to that. If we adopt this report, all of the allocation identified in this report, we get back to $36 million of a balance, which is still $49 million short. And Councillor Orlikow is right. There may be times, we do from time to time use the FSR to balance the budget. We have used it more frequently than any of us would like to balance the budget. Balancing the budget is essential. It's legislatively required. It's a must. Completing these projects this year or next that are listed here, the sidewalk, the multi-use paths are not essential. Important, but not essential. So I'm asking my council colleagues to please support the original motion and the report that our team, our corporate finance team has put forward to get us back towards, moving in the right direction towards the balance that we require in the Financial Stabilization Reserve, because we don't know what is coming down the pike. And Councillor Orlikow is right. We don't know what's ahead of us. So while I do appreciate him frankly fighting for, and I commend him for fighting for projects within the ward of River Heights, I do believe strongly that we need all of the funds that have been identified by our corporate finance team to go into the Financial Stabilization Reserve. I appreciate the clarity Councillor Barati, our finance chair, provided in his comments as well. So as tempting as it is, I will not be supporting Councillor Orlikow's amending motion, but will be supporting the main clause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, I'll call the question on the amending motion 5. Okay, a call for recorded vote, I heard. All in favor, please rise.
Councillors Dobson, Gilroy, Mays, Orlikow, Wyatt.
Those opposed, please rise.
Councillors, His Worship, Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Rawadi, Duncan, Eadie, Lukes, Rollins, Santos, Allard, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Mr. Clerk? The amending motion is defeated. On to the main item. Would you like to call up the vote count?
Sorry, the vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 5, nays 9.
Thank you. The main item now, All in favor? Please rise.
His Worship, Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Rawadi, Duncan, Eady, Gilroy, Lukes, Rollins, Santos, Allard, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will those opposed please rise?
Councillors Dobson, Mays, Orlico, and Wyatt.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 10, nays 4.
Item 8 passes. On to the next item, Mr. Clerk. Item 12, appointment of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Item 12, appointment of Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is really exciting news today to have put before Council the name of Mr. Joe Dunford to be appointed to the position of Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Winnipeg effective August 4th, 2025. I want to thank those that were on the recruitment committee, Madam Speaker, yourself, Madam Speaker, Councillor Ziti, Councillor Brawadi, Councillor Lukes, who participated in an extensive set of meetings, recruitment meetings, interviews, reviewing the names of individuals and their CVs, that came forward or expressed interest to serve in this really, really critical position. I'm really pleased, though, to see Mr. Dunford emerge. I think he has a wealth of experience and a great background both in the public sector and some private sector experience that will serve him very well in the new role as Chief Administrative Officer. So I'll maybe make a couple more comments when I close, but with that, I'm asking all councillors to support Mr. Dunford as the new CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wyatt.
Madam Speaker, I will be supporting the clause. I just want to put some comments on the record that the mayor is our executive officer, as been pointed out on the charter. We are ironically asked to vote on this, though in all intents and purposes, the strong mayor model system we have, he reports directly through to the mayor and the rest of EPC. And that the disconnect between that and the rest of council, even though we're asked to vote on this, continues to go on. You know, I remember Doug McNeil constantly running back and forth to Mayor Bowman's office, and one day I just stopped him in the hallway right over here, and I said, why don't you save yourself the time, just put your desk right up against the mayor's desk. You know, just save your time running back and forth. You know, and I get it. The CAO has to get to the mayor all the time. We got a system of government that's what that demands with a strong mayor model. But it leaves the rest of members of council really in the dark when it comes to public policy development ideas, trying to make our city better. It really undercuts the productivity of potential productive members of council, doesn't draw on all the resources and energy in this chamber that is there and experience that could bring things to the table that are not happening today. And that's really a sad thing, Madam Speaker, considering that there are some people in this chamber with great experience and ideas that really are not heard now, and that the CAO really will not interact with most likely, most of the time, because of the nature of the system we have today. But I'll be supporting the appointment, and I wish the gentleman all the luck, and I hope to meet him someday. I haven't technically yet met our CFO, but of course she does the same thing. She reports through. I've talked to her on the phone. She's a wonderful person. But, you know, it's the nature of the beast, it seems. There's that huge disconnect that exists, that it would have been nice if we can get people together, even once a month even, talk about things informally behind closed doors, just to share our thoughts, you know, a sharing circle, as they call it, you know, and maybe talk about things, and it would be information for the mayor's staff to hear about what's going on in our wards, maybe a way for them to assist us, maybe a way for us to assist the mayor's office and the mayor on his projects. But we don't have that
Councillor
dialogue.
Wyatt,
We have
thank
never
you.
had that dialogue. It was suggested back when we did SPAP, right? We went off to Elkhorn back in January of 2023, but nothing's come out of it. And we still have that disconnect, and we went back to our old habits right after SPAP, which, you know, I get that too. So, you know, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to support this. I wish him all the luck, and if he needs any assistance from myself, or if he wants to go for coffee, 10 minutes of his time, I'm happy to do it, give him suggestions, ideas, help along the way. All right? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Edie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having been on the selection committee as you have, Madam Speaker, I am totally in support of the hiring of Mr. Dunkirk as our CAO. And I just wanted to speak to the process a little bit. And, well, maybe the first statement I should say is, you know, applying for such a significant job as the Chief Administrative Officer of a city and of Winnipeg, I really appreciate all the people that did apply to try to become Winnipeg's CAO. Ultimately, we ended up with this decision. So I want to really speak a little bit about this because, I mean, yeah, we have a semi power mayor, but Madam Speaker, I was involved in the last two. I've been involved in more selection committees for CAO, but what I wanted to say is both mayors, Bowman, Gillingham, there was a lot of respect for non-EPC members and so on who were on that committee, and before I was actually on EPC, I was involved in that process. And I have to say that it was a fair process in where each of our, I guess you could call it votes as to who to hire for, were well thought out, and we came to a consensus. Madam Speaker, I think you would agree, a consensus about who to hire. And so I just want to leave it at that. The mayor is not exercising, well, at least the last two selection committees. I know that Mayor Bowman had a particular person, but that didn't happen because we did certain considerations and we ended up with who we did. And so just pointing that out again, Mayor Gillingham really listens to everybody at the table as we were making those suggestions and gave great consideration. And so again, I appreciated being on the committee, and I think that we have hired a very, well, we're going to ratify the hiring of a very a new CAO who I think is going to have great success. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to close on the item?
Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for their comments. And just to reiterate, Mr. Dunford, who's coming forward, is currently serving as the Deputy Minister of Public Service Delivery for the Government of Manitoba, a professional engineer with more than 2 decades of experience in the public and quasi-public sectors and senior leadership roles in Manitoba, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. His responsibilities have included oversight of capital planning, infrastructure, IT, procurement, and frontline services, and he's led major transformation efforts, including Lean Six Sigma approaches across departments, managing some of Canada's largest infrastructure projects, including a $5 billion hospital P3 in Halifax, a large-scale capital investments in transportation and healthcare across multiple provinces. And so, again, I want to thank Mr. Dunford for taking on this role, being willing to take on this role. And just before as I close, Madam Speaker, on behalf of all of us, want to say thank you to Mr. Sherwood Armbruster, our interim CEO, who we, I think, to a person believe has done an excellent job in the last year of his work. And I had someone not that long ago say, you know, I don't hear a lot from Sherwood Armbruster. I don't see him a lot, hear a lot in the media. And I said, I think a good CEO was like a referee in a hockey game. You never see them, things are going well, right? You just let the game play. But I do know that he and his interim deputy CAOs have been working very hard. They've not been sitting dormant. I think, and Councillor Gilroy's spot on, thank you, and all of the staff, support staff as well, have been working very hard. And I'll just touch on one thing. We do know that when Mr. Armbruster came into the role of interim CAO, he told us he was going to take on implementing the audit recommendations from the performance management audit. And I don't know how many he has implemented exactly to this date, but it's a lot of those recommendations. So thank you for not only serving in the role. Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for not only serving in the role, but not being passive and being a caretaker, but actively moving the city ahead in making the city better. So on behalf of all of us, through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Mr. Armbruster for his work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. We do thank you. With that, we'll call the vote on item 12. All in favor?
Aye.
That was pretty loud. That's great. Contrary? Carried. Just want to remind council, we will be breaking in about 25 minutes. There is a special meeting of Community Committee occurring at noon today. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item 14, authority for determining completeness of a development application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To introduce the item.
Thank you. I'll wait to hear from my colleagues, Madam Speaker, on this.
This was pulled down by Councillor Wyatt, item 14.
Madam Speaker, I pulled it down just to add some comments. I'm curious about the motion because we've run into the situation, and again, if possible for members of VPC to shed some light on this, that we have our own staff that typically will receive applications, for development and otherwise, and that they are empowered under the fact that we have a planning department to process these things. But it appears we're asking to step in politically now and to determine when an application is deemed complete. And that's something that historically we've always done at the administrative level. I'm questioning the wisdom of this only because it is our staff that they deal day in and day out with development applications or building permit applications or a development permit. And I understand the frustration because I've heard it. I think other members of the council, clearly members of EPC, have heard it, of applications going in, of follow-ups being made by the public service, and whether or not, I don't know if it's true or not, but whether there's a discrepancy between, what on the checklist is done and what's not done, and then kind of another checklist appears, well, you haven't filled out this in your application, it's not yet been determined complete. And that instead of one checklist being provided at the beginning of the process when a development application goes in and everybody can then see that, okay, this is missing, I can do it. It seems kind of like there's a revolving checklist and then things kind of appearing out of nowhere. And in many ways, I guess then it's creating the suspicion, I'll use that word, that because of the legislation brought down by the province, that specific outlines timing and when an application must get to a public hearing by the time it is deemed complete by the public service. And that, therefore, the public service is knowing this, and there's a suspicion that they're holding the process up for the purpose of being able to handle things administratively. I don't think they're doing it maliciously or anything. I think it's just because they only have so many resources that over the years we've cut for them to process any applications. Now, things have significantly slowing down out there right now in terms of applications. We see it in terms of our own community committee agendas, maybe the exception being East Kildonan and Transcona Community Committee, which continues to generate new tax rolls to the benefit of the city of Winnipeg at a higher proportion, always punching above its weight and doing our fair share. Of course, not necessarily getting our fair share of tax dollars going back into the Northeast Winnipeg, but we are doing our fair share more than that to add and help balance the general budget of the city of Winnipeg with new roles coming on the books. But the concern here, Madam Speaker, is that we're entering into an area that has been best left to to the public service, and maybe the direction needs to be given instead of saying, well, we will now have authority to deem an application complete at a standing committee or at EPC. Combine that with the director, which always has had that power, by the way. Maybe we need to simply say, this is the checklist, this is what has to be done, use one checklist, and then we could rule on that, and then delegate it again to the administration, ensure that they provide that to every client. I call them clients. They are our clients. They're our customers. Whether it be a person pulling a building permit or development permit or a big development application to build subdivision, they're our customers. And that we should be treating our customers, that you treat any customer with customer-friendly approaches and services, and that you're responsive, positive, and proactive to try to assist them if we truly believe we want to achieve our development goals in the city, especially goals that add new tax rolls and make it possible to keep our city going in many ways. So I'm just curious about that, because I struggle with the idea of us getting into the weeds now of something that has been very much an administrative world, and I think that's being pushed because of the requirements. I think it was Bill 37, whatever the bill was that the previous provincial government brought down, and required this clock to be, that started with regards to once an application is deemed complete, the clock kicks in, and it has to be at a public hearing within so many days. And that's the debate, or that's the concern by the industry, that there's a game afoot to stop the clock from kicking in, so to give the administration time. And I think it's partly because of the resources that they're struggling with. But anyway, having again said that, things have slowed down quite a bit, and they're not dealing with as much coming in the door as they were, let's say, even a year or two ago. So anyway, those are my thoughts, Madam Speaker. I'd like to hear from other speakers on this item if they care to share their thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion was tabled to EPC by myself. Funny enough, it's actually not a new process. Councillor Wyatt should potentially be familiar with this, as he was a councillor for the area of Transcona prior to 2011, when this authority was given to council, in the case that we needed to see a development application appear before our community committees. This would be a situation where we had a significant economic investment potential that the public service could not guarantee would come before either SPC on property and development or community committee in a manner that investor would need assurance of. So that would allow for either the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development or the Executive Policy Committee to deem it complete. If I would also like to note that in the therefore be it resolved, this is not a just stamp of approval. You need a written submission to show why it is that this would need to come before one of those two committees, which is key in the approval process. I appreciate the councillor's comments on confusion around why we would need this, and I totally agree that the resources within property and development are stretched. However, when the city is met with a potential economic driver to come, we've seen this happen in the past 12 months, that need assurance that these plans are going to be put forward. Potentially, we as council need to step in and give them that assurance. And this is what this motion speaks to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, to close.
You can call the question, Madam Speaker.
Call the question on item 14. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. Okay, the next item. That concludes the items. There's been a request to go back to item 13. There is a motion that was circulated. Motion 8, that item 13 be rescinded. That was moved by Councillor Duncan and seconded by Councillor Santos. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. With that, motion 7, they're asking to be withdrawn, and they have a new motion with better wording. So Motion 7 to be withdrawn. Councillor Duncan, and the concurrence of your seconder, Councillor Santos, all in favour?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Now we're looking at motion 9, amending motion by Councillor Duncan and moved by Councillor Santos. Mr. Clerk?
Item 13, exemptions for fees issued during the redevelopment of vacant buildings.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item once again, if you
I'll
wish.
wait to hear from my colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate the delegation, Ms. Squires, coming to speak to council today to support this. And thank you to the public service for bringing to our attention the wording around being directed to suspend invoicing fines. They would prefer, and I would support, that bylaw be put forward by the public service to give that direction in form of a bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Orlikow?
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I think it's again, City Hall is a wonderful place where there's many wonderful things we can do, including wear beautiful flowers. But again, it's always about, we have to talk about the money. I don't know how much this will cost the City of Winnipeg to waive fees and stuff like that. We get these requests quite a bit. So I'll support it today because it's just asking for a bylaw to come forward. But again, the bylaw itself, we've already got rid of the LDR. We've got rid of all of the rezonings for 1, 2, 3, and 4plexes. We're getting other ones. So all that means is there'll be a gap in our funding, which will have to require that the city taxpayer will pay for this. Instead of the developer, who is making money on most of these projects, that they should pay for it, the public tax dollars will go pay for it instead. So again, that's where my concern is. I think it's very noble. I think we should also be doing it for vacant buildings in the inner city. I think we should be doing a lot of this for people who are poor, that can't pay for a permit. There's lots of areas where I believe we also should waive permits. So again, I think this is a fine bylaw. It does open the door a little bit for other ones down the line, which I do not say is terrible, but I do want to, and I will follow up with the department after to get a kind of an idea how much this is going to cost the City of Winnipeg, which again, as we just talked about recently, the budget is being very strained. So every time we take out $1 or $1 million or $10 million, that has to come from the taxpayer. So again, back in the old days when, and I hate to say old days, but that's what they seem like they are nowadays, business pays for business, taxpayers pay for everything else that doesn't get any money. Parks, roads we can get away with it sometimes, but development should pay for development itself. It shouldn't be relying on taxpayers' dollars to subsidize it unless there's a really good need there. This one does have a good need in there, so I do agree with that. So I will support it today, but I will be following with Councillor Duncan and the department to say how much do we expect this to cost the City of Winnipeg and where that funding would come from. Again, it would be ideal in days of past, again, I sound like an old man, it never really happened, but I've always advocated for it. If you have a motion that wants to spend money or take money out of the system, how are you going to put the money back in? Where's that money going to come from? As who said it today, already follow the dollars. So we can all talk about how great these ideas are, which they are, many, many, many great ideas, but they do have a financial impact. So we have a 3.5 tax increase this year that I'm pretty sure the mayor's going to hold pretty tight on prior to an election, fair enough. And it was passed last year in the budget, fair enough. But again, that means that 3.5 tax increase, especially as we saw the population stats come in today. I'm not sure how much new tax revenue we're going to get into our little schemes. So I am concerned about the fact that we're waiving fees that will have to be paid by the public purse, which means will come off stuff like AT, it'll come off our community centers, it'll come off our parks. If we can find any more money to take away from our parks, I don't know how. So again, I'm a little nervous about it, but not about the intent of it. I'm worried about the cost of it. So I don't see any pricing in here at all at this, but again, I can work with everybody on this until I get that information when the bylaw comes back.
Thank you, Councillor Orlikow. Councillor Duncan?
It's a point of clarification here on the wording. This is a suspension of invoicing of fines on buildings and projects that are already in a demonstrable process of
Councillor
redevelopment.
Duncan, you can
Thanks.
do that in your close
Yep.
if you wish.
Well, it's
Thank
not my
you.
close, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your opportunity to close on the amending motion. Councillor Eady?
Did I have my hand up?
If you don't want to speak, that's fine.
Madam Speaker, I will just make a comment. So, Madam Speaker, there's consideration developers are businesses, there's no doubt about that, but there's also, out in my ward, I can tell you, I hear from people who have inherited a house because their dad died, or the house, remains vacant and needs to be renovated in order for it to be livable and rented out or sold, for that matter, Madam Speaker. And there's a number of those kind of projects that are going on. And so what's happening is they end up with this house. This isn't somebody bought that house and knows that they're going to have to deal with vacant derelict fees or fines and so on, Madam Speaker. We're talking about people who have a limited amount of money, Madam Speaker, and so they have to do the development process, which costs money, Madam Speaker, and costs money to get proper drawings and so on and so forth. So you have these individual homes, and you're taking away any possible money that they have to actually undertake the renovations. So if they are in the process of renovating and getting it ready to be livable so that it's not vacant anymore, why would we want to take money away from the success of a project that gets a vacant house or whatever onto the field? So I'm in total support of this particular motion, and by bylaw, having it in bylaw, okay, that's fine. So anyway, I'll be in full support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eady. No more further speakers. Mr. Mayor, or Councillor Duncan, would you wish to close?
Sure.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I apologize earlier there. I didn't realize the opportunity to close on this, but again, just to reiterate that this is on invoicing, the suspension of invoicing finds that essentially these buildings are undergoing a redevelopment or receiving municipal grant funding. A perfect example of this is a project on William Street. They're fine, they're continuing the construction, the redevelopment. That now is even more so, to Councillor Orliko's point, costing the city more because they come forward as an appeal to the committee now that's further tying up the system. We want to get away from that. We want to make sure that we're identifying the neglectful property owners that are letting these properties sit and rot, as opposed to the ones that are taking time to develop in an honest fashion. That doesn't mean that discussions won't happen with the department and inspectors along the way. So with that, those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleagues for the conversation and debate. You can call the question, please.
All in favor of item 13?
Aye.
The amendment, I guess the amending motion first. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. And the main item as amended, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, that's carried. Thank you. Councillor Orlikow, if I could ask you to take the chair momentarily so I can move the next item.
All right, everybody, so I figured out what's going on. We're good to go. We're at the amending motion, a notice of motion that's being submitted by Councillor Sharma. I've been informed that Councillor Sharma would like to suspend the rules, which requires a 2/3 majority. So
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's motion 2.
Yep.
And it was moved by myself, as you said, and seconded by Mayor Gillingham. It's regarding the appointments to the related committees, boards, and commissions. Council is aware. We've had communication around this, and I think it's timely that we move this today, so I'm asking for suspension of the rules. There are other appointments that will come forward at a later date. The Manitoba, or the Metropolitan Region, and the Police Board, and also the position for the Planning, Property, and Development Committee.
All right, so there's been a request to suspend the rules for motion number 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none? Wait, was that Councillor Lard a delay, or were you opposed, or just delayed? Councillor Lard, I just saw your hand go up.
No, it's to vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so unanimous support, suspend the rules, so now we'll hear motion number 2, which we kind of did.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As I just stated, I think the motion speaks for itself. Each member of council is aware of the appointments that are listed here, so I call for the vote. Thank you.
Calling for the vote. Anybody? Anyone? Paris? No? No? Okay, calling the vote. All in support? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Say 2 from what?
Sure.
Why not?
Take the chair back. No, there's more other things first. Councillor Orlikow, motion 6.
Motion number 3 by Councillor Mays and seconded by Councillor Orlikow. It's a park renaming. It's a notice of motion. That's it for that, correct? Yep. Number 4 by Councillor Mays and Councillor Duncan. It's another renaming. That's another notice of motion. Number 6. Clerks are very good. Moved by Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Rollins. It's that notice as well then?
Just a regular motion, so it'll be an auto referral to EPC.
It's an auto referral to EPC. That's it. Number 6, it's an automatic referral. That one, do you got it there, Councillor Chambers? Doesn't really matter, but it's not a referral, so that'll be going off the EPC. Number 11 by Councillor White and Councillor Orlikow, it's a notice of motion. See that one, so we'll see that in 3 kind of, what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Is that it? Yep. All right.
8, 9, and 10.
7, 8, 9. Okay.
Thank you.
So the clerks will give you those ones, but they're another point, I think. So we're moving on. Is that it, Mr. Clerk, to moving on to bylaws? Moving on to bylaws, everyone. We will now move on to bylaws for first reading. Mr. Mayor, would you mind?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker.
Oh, no,
Thank
I'm
you.
not acting. I'm
No,
real.
Mr.
I'm
Deputy
real.
Speaker. I apologize. There we go. This is not an act. This is sincerity. This is the real deal. Thank you. I would move them that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 49, 2025, bylaw number 61, 2025, bylaw number 64, 2025.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried.
Bylaw number 49 of 2025, bylaw number 61, 2025, bylaw number 64, 2025.
I move that the following bylaws be read a second time. Bylaw number 59, 2025, bylaw number 56, 2025, bylaw number 57, 2025, bylaw number 58, 2025, bylaw number 55, 2025.
Okie dokie. All in support?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried.
Bylaw number 59, 2025, bylaw number 56, 2025, bylaw number 57, 2025, bylaw number 58, 2025, bylaw number 55, 2025.
We'll now move on to the last one, Mr. Mayor.
I move that the bylaws number 59, 2025, bylaw number 56, 2025, bylaw number I'll start again. I move that the bylaws number 59, 2025, 56, 2025 to 58, 2025, all inclusive, and bylaw number 55, 2025 be read a third time, and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
Okie dokie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried.
And I move that bylaw number 66, 2025 be read a first time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried.
Bylaw number 66, 2025.
Thank you.
And I move that bylaw number 66, 2025 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried.
Bylaw number 66, 2025.
And I move that the rule be suspended and bylaw number 66, 2025 be read a third time, the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in support?
Aye.
Opposed? None carried. I believe we have to adjourn now for a community committee meeting, and so
Okay.
we'll leave the mayor on the hot seat till we get back for a question period when we come back at what time? 1:30, I'm hearing. Okay, everybody? So see you back at 1:30?
Good afternoon. I'd like to reconvene our council meeting of June 26, 2025. We're on the executive policy section and question period for the mayor. Councillor Mace.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd given advance notice of my question to the mayor, though I don't anticipate a answer at this stage. My question is about combined sewers. We recently had a report that will be coming to Water and Waste Committee about annual combined sewer discharge up again. Councillor Luke started today with some inspiring words about having a shared sense of purpose. So I'd like to think we have a shared sense of purpose. So we'd all like to reduce these sewer overflows. The mayor, to his credit, did oversee an increase in the budget, annual budget, from 30 million to 45 million for 24, 25, 26, 27. Right now, we've got in the capital budget a reversion to 30 million thereafter. We have asked the staff to come back with a report about rate report implications of just getting the big three done in a timely manner, basically sometime in the 2030s. The big three, of course, Ferry Road, Mission, and Jefferson. They total $400 million. Here's my question to the mayor. Can we ensure that the costing exercise that the staff are doing is based on the actual projected costs of these big three projects, not on the methodology that has been used in the master plan that builds in advance a 100% contingency? It would be like saying for every project we look at putting in the budget, let's double the cost, because that's what might happen under a Class 5. We did not do that on the transit garage. We have not done that on various other projects. But here alone, we have the sewer projects being costed at basically double the budgeted amount right out of the gate. No wonder it looks like an enormous bill. So can we at least get a projected rate implication if they're going to cost $400 million and if they're going to cost $800 million? Because if you look in the CSO report, as I'm sure we all do quite frequently, and it's 1,400 pages, if you look at the number for the capital cost for the big three, it's $400 million, but then they double it to $800 million. So can the mayor please undertake to make sure we get a rate report that indicates the cost to pay for the big three? And again, I commend the mayor for going along with this idea of let's at least try and get the big three done. So what can we get the projected costs based on the stated estimate, not this artificially inflated 100% contingency that is built into the master plan?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the councillor for the question and the just the heads up that he would be asking it. Certainly, yes, through you, Madam Speaker, I'll be glad to work through and with Councillor Eadie as the chair of the Water Waste Committee at this point, and with Councillor Mays as well, on when that report comes forward, or even in the formation of that report, asking our staff to give good consideration, careful consideration to the amount they're using for contingency number. Because as the councillor stated, if they project whatever ultimate budget they're projecting or forecasting, they have to set rates on that. And so if they're using, if any department is using 100% or 90% as a contingency number, or something well beyond the 10 to 15% that is perhaps normally used, that could and will impact rate projections. And so it's a fair question by the councillor. I thank him for it, and I'll be glad to work with him, Councillor Eadie, and the department on really refining the number before asking them to refine the number as it gets into the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second question.
We'll try and keep the positive vibes going, Madam Speaker. So the experience to date, as I suspect the mayor will remember from his days as finance chair and more recently, the actual experience with these projects, April 2020, Jefferson East, estimated cost 27 million, actual bid cost 17 million. And then very recently, April of 2025, Councillor Dobson's Rutland project, estimated
Question,
cost,
please.
estimated cost 59 million. It came in at 36.4 million, 60% of the estimated cost. So not only are the bids not coming in at 100% over, they're coming in way under the estimated cost. So is the mayor aware of that? And I think this further emphasizes the need to not build in a 100% contingency.
Yeah, I thank you, through you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the councillor for the comments and appreciate his, giving us clarity. Notice that their bids are coming in under budget. That's good news. That's very good news. I do want to just thank him also for highlighting the fact, as our department has said, there are many combined sewer overflow projects that need to be done and areas that need to be done. But if we tackle, as we tackle these big three, that will make the biggest impact. Our staff has been clear on that and reduced the combined sewer overflow issue to the largest degree. So I appreciate the councillor's questions and thank you for it.
Thank you. Third question.
Question. None of this, of course, has to do with construction inflation. All of this is 2019 dollars. So the contingency is not an inflationary allowance. It's just a sheer contingency. What is somewhat troubling is, in order to keep pace with our 2095 target, we have to put in 30 million a year, inflation adjusted. So we should already be at about 37 million in 2028, not just 30 million. There's some risk of this slipping into the 22nd century from our already troubling 2095 projected completion date. So I'm not sure if the mayor was aware of that, but just to confirm, none of the contingency stuff has anything to do with inflation. We're just looking at a contingency. All of this is in 2019 dollars. So can the mayor just confirm there may be, well, in order to avoid finishing this in the next century, we're going to have to get going better than 30 million a year. I do appreciate the mayor looking into the big three issue, but just can the mayor confirm none of this is inflation that's creating this big contingency? It's just, frankly, an extremely large contingency the staff have built in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I thank the councillor for his question. I'll look into that just to get clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the Standing Policy Committee, Water and Waste. Councillor Eadie on the report. Dave,
Sorry, is that, are we not asking?
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Councillor Gilroy?
Just through you, Madam Speaker, to the mayor, or maybe even the chair of the police board. I went on today just to see if I could find out who the makeup of the police board is. The page isn't working just because we did appoint somebody new to the police board today. So I just want to kind of ask you about gender diversity. I want to make sure that the board itself is made up by different people that represent our community, and I just want to find out about the different members on the board. I don't expect that this right now, but if somebody can provide me that information, maybe moving forward with the mayor, kind of ensure that when he is appointing.
Thank you for the question.
People that they're. Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Gillingham?
Thank you. I want to thank the council for the question. Technically, certainly, if the page is not showing up on the website, then we'll get whomever to look into that. And through you, Madam Speaker, if I can, I think Councillor Chambers already nodding his head, so he'll probably, help look into it as well. As far as the diversity on the board, I don't know if, can I defer to Councillor Chambers to answer this question?
Yes. Councillor Chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Gilroy. Yes, there is diversity on the board. That's something that I do like to celebrate in the sense that we have three individuals that identify as Indigenous. We have myself on the board as chair that is Black, and we have the new individual that is joining our board that is part of the Indo-Canadian community. So, we're looking for an additional person to fill out the 7 positions on the Winnipeg Police Board, but diversification is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, and this is just to bring it forward because I have an opportunity, Madam Speaker. I just also want to make sure that we're looking at gender as a diversity. So I think that that's really critical on some of the issues that we're dealing with at the city. I know I'm chair of the UN Safe Cities that looks at violence and sexual violence towards women in our public spaces. So I just want to make sure that we're also looking at gender diversity. But I want to thank the chair. It sounds like we're in a good spot there. So thank you very much. And yeah, I just want to keep making sure that we talk about gender
thank
diversity
you.
when I can. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Councillor Gilroy for...
Councillor Eady, the report of the Water and Waste
Thank you,
Committee.
Madam Speaker. I'll introduce the report, introduce the June 6, 2025 Water, Waste and Environment report, and move consent agenda items 1 through 3.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. We'll now get into question period under this committee. Any
Ask me the
questions for the
question,
chair? Okay, not today.
Ask me about the cost of pipes.
Ask yourself. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Community
I
Services.
have an answer. Doesn't want an answer, right? Okay. Doesn't
Next
want an
is the
answer.
Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. Thank you, Councillor Eady. Councillor Santos, the chair, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I introduce the report and move adoption of consent agenda item number 1.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Okay, we have some motions under this committee.
Yes, ma'am.
We have motion 10, moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Rowlands. It's regarding Sherbrooke Pool fitness and weight room fees. That'll be an automatic referral to the standing committee. We have motion 10, moved by Councillor Chambers, seconded by Councillor Mays. This is also an
It's motion
automatic-
12. Motion 12.
Motion 12, yes. It's an automatic referral.
Okay.
Sorry, notice of motion, yes, so it'll appear on next month's council agenda. Councillor Chambers? Okay, thank you. And then we have sorry, the topic of that one, Mr. Clerk, is a CIGP grant
Yes, it's
to
community
St.
incentive
Norbert
grant.
Biz.
Yes.
Okay. And we have a motion 13 as a notice of motion moved by myself and the mayor, and it's regarding the Northwest Library. Okay. On to question period. Any questions for Councillor Santos? Okay. Any questions? Next is the, Councillor Orlico, go
I
ahead.
know the answer, but I think the public should know the answer. We talked a little bit about it, and it's something I've been long waiting for, the tree bylaw. Will we be seeing that shortly?
Okay.
Councillor Santos.
Yes, thank you for the question. My understanding is the report is still being written by the department, and we hopefully will have it by later on this fall or early next spring.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Standing Policy Committee on Public Works. Councillor Lukes, our chair.
Yes, I would like to bring forward items 1, 2, and 4, and 5. And I'd like to pull number 3.
Thank you. I'll call the question on 1, 2, 4, and 5. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary carried. Mr. Clerk, item 3.
Item 3, Transportation Master Plan, Transportation 2050.
Okay. Well, here we are finally with the Transportation Master Plan 2050. So I'd like to think that all the meetings that we held over the duration of the last 3, 4, almost 5 years, where we had councillors come in to give input and see it unfold has resulted in a good result. We've not really had much drama here. We do have a little bit of conversation going on about the goods movement and the proposed truck routing network. This is this sets a vision for transportation going forward. It looks at sustainable transportation, active transportation, goods movement, and transit transportation, and just vehicular transportation. We are a city without freeways, and I think one of the most challenging parts of this whole process was to try and find that balance of moving goods, moving people, moving them in a sustainable way, and in an active transportation way. So I think we've found that balance. This is a living, breathing document. It can be changed and modified. I know there's concerns about the proposed truck route network, and I just want people to actually read the recommendations. And recommendation number 3 says that the public service be directed to report back by March 2026 with prioritization and funding strategy for the implementation of the goods movement study, which includes the proposed truck route network. So today, and I'll say this for Councillor Wyatt's sake, for today, we're not voting on a final truck route network. There's opportunity for discussion. I've had lots of discussion. I will commend him for his ability to communicate to his ward, because they've all communicated back to me very vigorously. There will be a future opportunity to discuss this, and in March, we'll finalize the trucking route plan. I want to thank the Manitoba Trucking Association, who has been part of the Goods Movement Advisory Committee, and who actually recommended that committee be put in place, and has given just stellar input into this process and to the final document. And I want to thank the Manitoba Heavy Construction Association. They're very concerned about the movement of goods also. Many other stakeholders that we've had. And I really want to give a special thanks to Alex, who's sitting up here in the gallery. Bravo, bravo. Alex has been with the city for 30 years. He was in transit, and then he moved, well, I think he got seconded then to, then he moved to Public Works, and then he's been working on this. And I don't even want to ask him how many times he was called back out of retirement to help finish this transportation master plan. So I want to thank him very much for putting all of this and guiding and herding this process. So, and I want to congratulate him on his retirement also. We won't call you back. And I also want to thank Mr. Brad Narnick and acknowledge that he too is retiring from Public Works. He is the Director of Engineering, I believe, in the bridges and just engineering in general. We've had a lot of interaction with him with bridges and underpasses, and Councillor Sharma and I had very good interaction with him back in the Waverley Underpass days. And the one thing I always have said about Mr. Narnick was he would just tell us the way it was. There was not a lot of spin with anything he said, and we really appreciated that, and I really appreciated it. So we've got 2 senior engineers leaving and retiring, and you know, it's a loss, but we've got a lot of juniors and up and coming, so things look good for the future. The Transportation Master Plan, which is in front of us today, is very comprehensive, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. We also updated, of course, the pedestrian and cycling strategy, which I just really want to note in here, which has taken a very good approach in tying actions to roads and setting a future for sustainable forms of transportation. So long journey, long process. It's probably time next year to start revising it and starting in the next version, but that'll be on hold for a while. So I present this to you all, and if there's any speakers, I welcome you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Okay. Councillor Lukes, if you wish to close, or Councillor Wyatt?
I'd like to thank Councillor Lukes for her comments. For the record, there indeed is a lot of concern in my community just pertaining to one part of the transportation master plan. I know it's a far larger document than that, as we know. Just some comments that I want to put on the record, which is that we have, for a long time in the city, relied on a regional road network that I think really has done a lot for us. We as a city made a decision, for example, in the 1970s, that we were not going to build a freeway system. Other cities have, even Saskatoon. We've made a decision not to build dedicated BRT corridors. This council previously made that decision, even though previously we were going to build them. We decided to put them on the regional streets or along them. We made the decision not to pursue LRT just by the fact that we're not doing anything. So again, the transportation network is reliant on our regional streets. Our entire bus transportation network is reliant on our existing regional streets. Our entire trucking transportation network is reliant on our existing regional streets. At the same time, we have a growing and stronger bike lobby coming forward and wanting lanes to be removed from our regional streets for dedicated bike lanes. So we're actually trying to do all these things with the same regional streets that we've had now for 40 or 50 years. Many of them, by the way, like the improvements that we're seeing decades ago to Maryland Goulet, or, you see other improvements where certain transportation routes, the linking of Isabel all the way through to the north end, bringing together disjointed streets. These were actually initiatives not done by the city of Winnipeg. This goes back to the 1960s. This goes back to Metro. This goes back to a time when there was actually another level of government, a regional level of government that brought together all the municipalities, pre-Unicity, 13 of us, well, 12 because we lost Headingley, and brought us all together and introduced, this is the idea, this is the time that built La Jamodier. That was done with the province and Metro. And great separations all over the place, Madam Speaker. Everything we've been living off of in terms of our regional street system really has been inherited from a council that does not exist anymore, back to the 1960s. And we really have been relying on that system, and they did great work and benefited from, but you can see what's happening in the city. Intersection after intersection is becoming more congested as there are in times. You can see now we're literally, certain parts of the city, an intersection will back up into another intersection and beyond at rush hour in the morning or in the night. If you do not leave downtown here by before 3:30, you might as well wait till 6. At least that's in my end of the city, to try to get home, because Region La Jamodier and everything else is all clogged, and for hours. We don't have an intersection upgrade program. Other cities have, where they've gone in and said, okay, we're going to be adding more storage lanes, we're widening intersections, we're adding more yields, more acceleration lanes, more deacceleration lanes. They've done all that in other cities. We haven't done any of that here. We kind of nickel in. So we're not even looking after our existing regional street system, but we have no plan, and we have this idea of Chief Peguis Trail, which is wonderful. But once again, we're building a road that's going to have traffic lights basically at every 300 to 500 meters. And now Kenaston widening, yes, we're widening it, but we're only buying enough for another lane in every direction, and we're not really going and buying and securing the lanes that we need to in the future. And then on top of that, we're actually more traffic lights that never existed before on Kenaston. I've seen the plans. I was on Public Works. Instead of looking at a system and say, okay, maybe we need to build what I like to term a green freeway, where you run an LRT down the middle in the future or today, and then you say by 2045, let's say, with the help of the federal and provincial governments, by us pushing them to transition and help people get into green electric cars, we transition these freeways by 2045, every vehicle on it will be electric, and by God, we will lead the charge of the city of Winnipeg by transitioning our entire fleet in that direction, helping to drive down the price of electric vehicles for the average consumer, ironically, if government led the charge, by the way, which we're not doing. We're like walking blind into a massive climate crisis that's coming at us like a freight train down the track, as if we're pretending it's not happening. And then not tens of thousands will be on the move heading north. When everything dries up from Texas all the way to Saskatchewan, like the dirty 30s, there'll be tens of millions at our border. And then what are we going to do? And this could happen in our lifetime if you're unfortunate to live about till 2050. I'll be 80. Those are the projections if we go over 1.5 degrees. We know most of the reputable science, virtually all of them, have said, you could track us the beginning of the climate, the Industrial Revolution, the rise in temperatures with the rise of fuel burn. I'm coming back to the transportation. I know, Madam Speaker, but this is all linked together.
Okay, there's no extension, the time is up.
Well, can I get an extension? I guess not. All right.
Councillor Orlikow moves extension of 2 minutes.
Two would finish
All
it
in favor?
nicely. I'll take half of that. All right.
Contrary, carried 1 minute.
I would just say this. Look, we have some massive issues coming at us. We got to combine the transportation master plan with the climate crisis out. We got to combine it with the fact we are a transportation network relying on the movement of goods and services in the dead center of the country. We are the link between east and west. We have to push the federal government to come to the table. We've been treated worse than a doormat since Confederation. A doormat is treated better as people walk across us, back and forth. They've been doing to us since Confederation. Doesn't matter what party is in charge over there in Ottawa. And we have this challenge in the city with the damages done with the residential schools and the need to help that community to rise up and as an opportunity to get employment in this industry and to get people working. Madam Speaker, we can actually solve a lot of problems, ironically, just through this very plan that we have here today, but we're not leading the charge the way we need to, in my opinion. And there's certain other things outstanding, and I'm going to vote against it only because I'm concerned that, you know, maybe the noise will blow over from Transcona, and we'll be back at it again in terms of the truck route. I'm very concerned about that and the way the process, how that unfolded. That was a route that was actually taken off in 2009. Surprising to see it back here today, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Lukes to close, if you wish.
Sure. So, yeah, I thank Councillor Wyatt for his comments and such. I think, you know, I get many, many calls on transportation and why we're not doing this and why we're not doing that. And I think we have to realize that we're a city of about 800,000 people and a province about, what are we at, 1.4 million now? That's not a lot of people, right? And our funding model set up the way it is relies heavily on provincial and federal support. And I think we all realize that our absolute number one priority is the North End Sewage Treatment Plant. And if we can't get that funding and can't get that going, it doesn't matter what we can do, right? Like, yeah, we have a lot of challenges in the city. We have a lot of priorities, and transportation is critical to goods movement, and it's critical to our economy. The opening up of Centerport, I think, is going to make a big difference from an economic standpoint for the city of Winnipeg. We're progressing on that. I want to thank the mayor on that. I voted for that one. I was not going to vote for that budget, but I did vote for it because of the pipe being in the budget, and that's very, very important that we get that going, which is well underway. So while we have a lot of challenges in the city, we do have to make plans. We've put a lot of work into this plan, and like I said, it's not set in stone. It can be varied depending on other partnerships that may evolve provincially, federally, or otherwise. So I'm really pleased with it. It was an incredible amount of work that the public service did, and Mr. Patman up here with Mr. Rajik. Incredible amount, a very, very big load to carry and get through during pandemic and trying to do consultations. But I think what we have in front of us, from what I'm hearing from everyone, or not hearing, which I guess is a good thing too, is positive. So with that, I'll close and ask you to call for the vote.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. And Councillor Wyatt noted in opposition. Okay, we have no motions. We do have bylaws.
I have a whole bunch of bylaws
Councillor Lukes?
that I'd like to, oh yeah, here we go. I'll move that the following bylaws be read a first time: 5225, 5325, 6025, and 6225.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 52, 2025, bylaw number 53, 2025, bylaw number 60, 2025, bylaw number 62, 2025.
Councillor Lukes?
I'd like to move that bylaws numbered 52, 2025, 53, 2025, 60, 2025, and 62, 2025 be read a second time.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 52, 2025, 53, 2025, bylaw number 60, 2025, and bylaw 62, 2025.
Okay, and I'd like to move that the rule be suspended and bylaws numbered 52, 2025, 53, 2025, 60, 2025, and 62, 2025 be read a third time, and that same be passed and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Contrary? Carried. We'll now get right into question period under this committee. Councillor Mays, first question.
Thank you, and I alerted Councillor Lukes to the question. We're having a bit of a controversy in the St. Vital ward. I'm not sure if Councillor Rollins is having the same thing on her side of the St. Vital Bridge, but a project which ended on time last fall and which I praised the staff involved. Somehow we seem to now have entered another phase of the project which involves work under the bridge, the St. Vital Bridge, which is massively altering traffic patterns for a group of people who live on a street called Kingston Crescent, which is like a peninsula that extends out and the Red River wraps around it. Very tricky to get into if you have access blocked from one direction. So unfortunately, I was not advised this work would be taking place. I was never consulted about this work taking place. I was merely left as the complaints department, which we so often are here at City Hall. So I'm trying to get some progress from the Public Works Department. I wonder if Councillor Lukes would be willing to sit down with me and the senior leadership of the department to try and get some resolution. Otherwise, I'm left with the position of simply giving out phone numbers of senior staff, since I have no idea what's going on, and I'm left in the position of the complaints department.
Thank you. The response?
Sure. I see that Mr. Narnick at 11:53 responded by saying that it was related to girder painting, and it was added to the contract back in 2023. So they clearly, if they're closing a road in a very convoluted sort of navigatable area, which I know that Kingston Row area is, maybe they should have relayed that to you. But yes, I'll absolutely sit down with them and you and try and weed through this and get it sorted out.
Thank you to Councillor Lukes. Yes, had I been advised in 2023 of this work, there would have been so much opportunity to actually consult with the staff and advise the public. Unfortunately, I found out at 11:53 after 8 or 10 days of solid complaint from the residents. So, thank you to Councillor Lukes. Happy to take her up on the offer.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands. So first Councillor Dobson, and then on to Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you very much. We continue to put more money into bike lanes in this city, so it's important to know the costs. So my first question is, what are the year-round costs for maintenance, snow clearing, sanding, repairs, etc., for bike lanes? And could you provide the costs for active transportation paths as well, seeing bikes use them as well?
Sure. I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can get back to you on it. I think a lot of it is in the budget, but fire me an email and I'll get back to you on that, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question.
Second question.
Second questions. Do you have a forecast model? No, pardon me. This spring, once the snow melted, I went and drove down every single road in St. James just to have a look at the conditions of the roads. Many were in terrible shape. So my second question will be, do we have a forecast model showing the condition of our roads in the future if we maintain our current spending?
Yes. So you do receive a map that provides you with the status good, fair, poor of the road conditions. And the city in this last budget purchased a new software system that they have. It's a system that they've attached to vehicles. They've driven every road. They're using AI and other technology to assess the condition of the road, and they're transcribing it now into data that they can use to do a better analysis of the good, fair, poor road conditions. And then we do have a projected budget which goes to 2025, another, I believe, 2 years, and I can send you that projects the amount of funding that we will be using for roads for the maintenance and repair. So I can send you that. So yes, they're actually getting better and better. They've also, I think was it last year? They also have a machine that has this equipment on it for sidewalks and pathways. So they're getting a much better technical assessment of the condition of the roads, pathways, and sidewalks, that they can do a better analysis for asset management. So yeah, we're making a lot of progress in the last 2 years. Now, the factor, of course, is the money part, right, to fix it. We may have the data on what needs to be fixed, but we do have a projection. I believe it's for another 2 years. And then we will sit down and reassess this data and do another 4-year projection.
Thank you. Final question?
Yeah, final question, but I'd like to make a comment. That's very positive. Thank you very much. My third question is there a chart showing asphalt pothole repairs in the past and a projection for the future? My question is, are we putting down more asphalt each year, year over year?
Okay. I can get the budget breakdowns of maintenance, But for sure, some years are worse than others. This year was nowhere near as bad as last year because we had an awful lot of freeze thaw throughout the year and then in the spring. This year, if you recall, the spring was very dry, which enabled the crews to get out sooner, and it was nowhere near as bad as last year. So we do have a maintenance fund that we use for potholes. I do believe they count how many potholes they're fixing, so we could get that data to you. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Mays, followed by Councillor Orlikow.
I think that's really. There's the somewhat unusual item here that we have an extension of time for the North Garage replacement project. It's a request for an extension of time. Also, we have now the Public Works agenda that talks about the North Garage replacement project implications. To me, I thought this was Councillor Luke's finest hour this term, was saying, no, we're not simply going to massively increase the budget. You're going to have to make your case and try and find some savings. So I wonder if Councillor Luke would like to speak to this item. It could be next council meeting, it could be this time, but I too think this stands in contrast to my earlier point about the sewage thing, where if you build in a massive contingency, you probably can't get it in the budget. But if you don't, you can get it in the budget, then come back later and say, oh, well, we're only 75% over. You should fund it. Well, I think to the credit of Councillor Lukes, and I voted with her on that, she said, no, come back and rethink this. So I don't know if she wants to speak to it now or at the next council meeting, but I think it's worth talking about what the implications are.
Thank you. Councillor Lukes?
Sure. So this report came forward, and it says that we need an extension for 30 days till July. Next week is July, and today this report was published on the Public Works agenda that speaks to the North Garage. The department has come back identifying what will be in the garage, what won't be in the garage, and staying within the budget that we gave them. I did interviews on this today. The fact of the matter is that we have a certain amount of money that we're going to stick to. We don't have the money that was requested. There was a delay in signing the funding grant. The provincial and federal government did delay signing the ICIP grant for a period of time, which, of course, every time you wait a year and a half, costs go up. But what's happening is we are building the garage to accommodate many, many, many transit vehicles and maintenance. All the details, you can flip to the Public Works Committee meeting agenda. You'll see it on there. We are spending, and I want people to understand that, you know, if they think that we're not putting money into transit or we're not investing into transit, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars these last five to probably 10 years in transit, more than ever before, in making it safer, upgrading it, new vehicles. So we are very committed, this council, all of you are voting, you're very committed to supporting transit. You know, it's kind of like you have a house, you want to put a sunroom on, you only have so much money right now. There's opportunities in the future to put the sunroom on. There's opportunities in the future to expand the garage. We now are certain we've got a federal government in place and a provincial government that are very positive towards transit. So we are going to start the garage, the North Garage, and well, actually now we're calling it the Oak Point Garage, and we will be seeking out funding to help with the future expansion. But at this point, we're sticking within the budget and we're moving forward, which is a very positive, which actually you'll hear in the Public Works Committee, they're planning to start this fall. So that's very positive.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Orlikow.
I stand here today, ask this question for my mate of Georgina, who's getting just bombarded with backlane calls. It is crushing how much calls we're getting. And when we talk to the department, my question will be, when we talk to the department, they indicate to us, well, you know, Councillor Orlikow, funding is short. So we're actually going to leave many of the back lanes that are beyond repair, and we're just going to TBO the other ones as much as we can. So in essence, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to tell my residents. If your back lane has failed, it's too bad, so sad. It will never be fixed. Because 2 a day is not 2 a year, if not 1, maybe 2. So have we given up on back lane repair?
you,
And
Councillor
I'll excuse me, I'll also speak to this, having driven many, many in Councillor Gilroy's ward lately, visiting friends over there. So we are focused on priority ones, priority twos, residentials. Back lanes are not a top priority. The service roads are not a top priority. We're not giving up on them, but again, it's like anything else, we have to balance the funding. I want to thank the mayor for the neighborhood action team. We've got a lot of neighborhood action team folks that are doing back lanes, which are the lowest priority in comparison to the other roads in our network. Now, they're not doing the major overhauls, they're doing patchwork, but, you know, if you've got a lot of back lane issues, this is the time to use the neighborhood action team is to do these back lanes because they're very low priority in the list of what is a priority. So we're not giving up. We've got another funding model, like I mentioned to Councillor Dobson, in 2 years' time that we're setting out. And I encourage everyone to be engaged in that. But again, it all comes down to money. We're a city of 800,000. We're not giving up, but we're chiseling away at the lowest priorities.
Thank you. No further questions? Let's move to the next committee, Standing Policy Committee on Finance. Councillor Brawadi, our chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce the report of June 10th and move item 1 as consent.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Okay, we'll get right into question period under this committee. Any questions for the chair? Councillor Dobson.
In 2021, we put in place the Mature Communities Infill Guidelines. Since then, there's been a rash of lot splits and builds with secondary suites, vastly increasing their value. My question is, what is the value in increased taxes for these lot splits since 2021? And could you break it down by wards?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you very much to my colleague, through you, Madam Speaker, to my colleague. I thank you for that question. I don't have that information readily available. I can see if the Assessment and Taxation Department tracks that and if they can provide that. I do know every year we do have what we call net taxes added. That is growth, and that actually is new tax money. And when it's in existing communities where the cost of delivering additional municipal services is less than the extra revenue, it is definitely positive for the city's bottom line. I know back in the days when property taxes were frozen, the only growth we had was net taxes added, and that's certainly a very positive thing for our bottom line.
Thank you. Second question.
Okay, so recently we passed a new zoning which will allow 2, 3, and 4 units on each lot. And since you sit on the budget working group, do we have a projected forecast on how much additional revenue this will provide for the city going forward?
Thank you. Councillor Brawadi.
I mean, every year we look at the next period of time and we do forecasts. I don't have any specifics on what the extra opportunities are of the changes to the zoning bylaw in that regard.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Mays.
I'm not sure that previous question, we did have a discussion that is Councillor Brawadi aware that the staff had indicated in writing that the incremental tax or revenue would be, I believe it was $143,000 a year from that exercise, the 2s, 3s, and 4s. I'm not sure that was what Councillor Dobson was asking about there.
Thank you. Councillor Brawadi.
Thank you. That number is not super familiar to me, but I will certainly inquire.
Second question.
Just wonder if Councillor Brawadi could speak a bit about, I noticed in the budget, capital budget, the section on local roads, there's a line called alley renewals, where funding going from $5 million to $12 million to 14 to 19 to 21 over the next number of years. Not quite keeping pace is the Pulver Mixer program for gravel back lanes, but I wonder if Councillor Brawadi can provide any further, is there any reductions in that budget, either capital for alley renewals or for the granular lanes?
Thank you. Councillor Brawadi?
I think like it comes to all of our roads, we could certainly use more funds to keep the condition of the roads up to what Winnipeggers expect. But it is my understanding that we haven't zeroed out back lanes and lanes, and that there is continued investment in lanes, including the Pulver Mixer program that Councillor Mays refers to.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions on this committee. Let's move on. Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Our Chair, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move consent agenda item 1 through 8.
All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor Mays? You're-
That, gotta
go
give us a
ahead.
heartbeat of time there to pull something. I would like to pull item 8, please.
8, okay. Pilot project for narrow lots in the Sage Creek neighborhood. Any others? Okay, I'll call the question on 1 through 7. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Mr. Clerk?
Item 8, pilot project for narrow lots in the Sage Creek neighborhood.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, do you wish to introduce the item?
No, I will hear from my council colleague on this.
Thank you. Councillor Mays?
Yeah, just a word in praise of planning staff, not something you always hear from me, but on this particular file, it's very good cooperation with the director and Mr. Veach and others to try and come up with a pilot project in a greenfield area, so you're not changing existing arrangements. So greenfield area to look at these narrow lots, and a word in praise of Councillor Duncan, who reworded the thing a bit to make it more comprehensible and waited until we actually had the application in hand so that you could take the actual pilot project and compare it to what was actually being proposed. So I look forward to this coming through to our community committee. But, you know, Sage Creek is a pretty dense neighborhood. Some of these newer suburbs are really quite dense compared to older parts of the city. And I think that Councillor Lukes has made that point many times, and I would like to echo that. So just want to thank city staff and Councillor Duncan for their work in putting this thing back together after it had kind of fallen off the shelf.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My pleasure to bring this back to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. I did have a chance to speak with the department on the intent and particular neighborhoods, and when it was identified that this was Sage Creek and that Councillor Mays had done his homework and due diligence in getting this in order, I was more than supportive. I also learned that lots in Edmonton in similar greenfield neighborhood developments are as low as 16 feet for frontage. So this is a new concept to that neighborhood in Winnipeg, and I look forward to seeing how it pans out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question on item 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. We have bylaws under this committee. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 50, 2025, bylaw number 51, 2025, bylaw number 63, 2025, bylaw number 67, 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 50, 2025, bylaw number 51, 2025, bylaw number 63, 2025, and bylaw number 67, 2025.
Second and third readings. Councillor Duncan?
Move that bylaw number 44, 2025 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 44, 2025.
I'd like to move that bylaw number 44, 2025 be read a third time and that the same be passed and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that bylaw number 65, 2025 be read a first time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 65, 2025.
I'd like to move that bylaw number 65, 2025 be read a second time.
I can't hear anyone, by the way. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 65, 2025.
I'd like to move that the rules be suspended, that bylaw number 65, 2025 be read a third time, and that the same be passed in order to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you. We'll now have question period for our chair. Any questions for Councillor Duncan? No questions. Next is the Governance Committee of Council. Councillor Dobson, if you could move the report on my behalf, please.
So moved.
That is one item, yes?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
I have questions for Councillor Dobson about governance. No, I don't. I'm kidding.
All right, let's put 30 minutes on the clock for that. All right. With that, Councillor Thompson, will you move adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary, carried. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Rawadi, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Eady, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Orlico, Rollins, Santos, and Allard.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.